It's thinking.
There it is.
Let me check. There we go. Okay. Tweet.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. Oh. Wow, there are people here. Okay.
I know.
I have something in my eye. This is a terrible way to start this live show.
Oh no.
Oh, okay. All right.
At least it wasn't one of those like twitches that you get. Like muscle twitch.
I get this when I haven't slept very well, and then it like bugs me all day. So, all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to, let's call it a special episode of the Stitch and Bitch live shows, except we're not actually stitching, but in some categories of this award, we might be bitching a little bit. With love. But today we're going to be discussing the 2022 Hugo Awards shortlist that was announced 3 or 4 days ago. So we have our usual Stitch and Bitch crew, as well as our two guests, Kelsey and Kristen, to give us even more opinions. So thank you to everybody for being here. Let's go around and introduce ourselves. I'll go first because I'm already talking. I'm Rachel. This is my channel, Colonati. I haven't been around very much, but I am still reading things. I promise. And that's all I have to say about myself. So let's do Kristen next.
Hi, I'm Kristen. My channel is Kristen L SFF Reader. I'm actually on hiatus right now for maybe a couple months, but under normal circumstances, I talk a lot about science fiction and fantasy, and especially the awards. I am kind of obsessed with the Hugo Awards. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter, although I don't post as much there.
Cool. And that's why we want you here, because you've probably read everything that we haven't. All right, Kelsey.
Hi, I'm Kelsey. My channel is The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I am very excited to be here. I was not very caught up on reading 2021 releases until like the very last minute. I did like a binge of a bunch of things on my TBR right before nominating closed. So like, I'm still not very caught up by like overall standards, but I have read some things and I'm very excited to talk about some of the things that I have read.
Cool. Rhea?
Oh, hey, hello. So I'm Rhea. My channel is called The Bookfinch, and I am a Finnish person from Finland. I guess that's the biggest draw there, but you know, I usually read a lot of like graphic works, manga, etc., and also a lot of fantasy. So I'm probably the most excited to talk about probably the graphic works and presentation, dramatic presentation categories, because I am invested.
Cool. And Di?
I am Diana. My channel is Bookish Di. I have not actually read a whole lot from this year's shortlist. I didn't read a whole lot of science fiction and fantasy last year. So it's going to be a hectic couple of months trying to catch up with everything that's on the shortlist before voting closes. And I have thoughts about the Lodestar shortlist.
Me too.
Oh, yes. My thought is that at least I don't have to read one of the nominees in that category.
All right. We are missing Bree, who was going to join us. She had something come up at the last minute, but hopefully she and maybe Claire will join us later on in the live show. Keep your fingers crossed that they are able to make it. So yeah, let's jump into it. And KJ, I did make it with like 10 minutes to spare. I just finished reading Monstrous Volume 6.
And we have our first cat appearance of the stream.
We do.
I mean, Rachel, you have read Monstrous Volume 6. I am still behind. I need to read Volume 4 next.
You can do it.
Yep.
And I will just say, it is possible to read all of the novelettes and short stories in 2 days. I just proved that.
Way to go.
For anybody planning their binging, you can do it. All right, so let's get into it. If anybody is looking for the shortlist, there is a link to the official list on the Hugo Awards site in the description of this live show, and I will do my best to read them off as we talk about each of the categories. So we're going to start at the top of the ballot with the big one, the best novel category. So the nominees here are A Desolation Called Peace by Arkady Martin, The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers, Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki, A Master of Jinn by P. Jelly Clark, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. Who wants to dive in?
I can start. So looking at this list, I think there are two surprises for me. One, that's cool, and one, I was not expecting that. So the one that's cool is Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. So I have heard good things about that. I haven't read it yet, but it's, a debut novel. It's from a trans author of color, and it's kind of really exciting to see something like that on the ballot. And the that surprising book is Project Hail Mary, because that's a really popular SF book, but I honestly did not expect it to end up on the Hugo ballot. And I think it's the first time in a couple of years that a white cis man has been on the best novel shortlist.
Was our last one The Collapsing Empire?
Oh yeah. What?
Or is there one since then?
Yeah.
I don't actually remember anymore.
Please don't ask hard questions. I can't remember what I did yesterday.
Yeah, I can't remember, but I was thinking that it would be something else.
Last year there wasn't, for certain.
Yeah, no, last year there wasn't.
And the one before that was 2020. What happened in 2020? I don't know.
I don't think any of us remember 2020.
So
I have erased most of 2020 from my memory. So
yeah,
I was doing some shortlist reactions, bite-sized on TikTok, just to see what TikTok would think of Hugo Award content, and I accidentally said that A Memory Called Empire won last year because my mind just erased a whole entire year in there, and I didn't remember that a whole year's awards happened in the middle. So I understand the difficulty.
I am thinking that Project Hail Mary is isn't this the second or third time that Andy Weir is basically rewriting The Martian with different characters?
Well, I don't know. I only read The Martian, and I heard not great things about his second novel, so I didn't read it. And I honestly wasn't planning on reading this one, but now I guess I am because it's on the short list.
The only one of this I've actually read is Artemis, and it was very meh for me, but I've heard that this one is better, so I will read it.
I'm unfortunately on record as saying that I wouldn't read Project Hail Mary unless somebody convinced me to, and the Hugo Awards just convinced me to try it. So
Oh, that's the boat I'm in.
Hugo Awards are twisting your arm.
Yeah.
That's how I'm gonna be. Honestly, if Sanderson gets on the ballot next year, because I think he's publishing this year, I'm just I don't want to read Sanderson. I have no interest in Sanderson. Please don't make me read it for this goddamn award.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Kristen, have you read Project Hail Mary? What did you think of it?
I've been putting it off because honestly, when The Martian came out as a movie, and I had known it was a book, it just did not appeal to me at all. I don't like survival stories that are highly improbable. I don't like either of those two things, but I especially hate them together. And that sounded like what it was. And so when Project Hail Mary came out, I just wasn't interested. And I've been hearing everyone saying it's so good. They love it so much. And it won Goodreads Choice, but I still don't have an urge to read it. But now that it's on the ballot, I will. But
here's the thing. Everyone who I've heard say that Project Hail Mary is good is saying it because it basically goes back to the root of like what Andy Weir did with The Martian. It's basically the same book, but with like a slightly different setting. It's in space instead of a planet.
Which might be perfectly enjoyable. I mean, I really enjoyed The Martian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed The Martian as well. But when thinking about like awards categories, do I want a derivative of another book, or do I want a book that does something exciting and new and tries to explore genre conventions in a different like way? Wasn't The Martian actually also nominated for a Hugo back in the day? Like I feel
don't
like it
remember
was.
if it
Before my
was
time.
eligible because it was self-published originally, I think.
Mm.
He won that. It was called the John C. Campbell Award back then. He won that for The Martian.
That's
with
right.
the
Oh,
movie.
okay.
And I think the movie won something, but
Yeah, I
not
think
the
the movie
Yeah,
won,
the movie. Well,
long form.
also the Martian movie, it seems, started the like the flood of Matt Damon or the plague of Matt Damon. Like he was everywhere in those couple of years after The Martian. You could not escape him.
I feel like now that you've mentioned Matt Damon, I need to go find that video and fucking Matt Damon again. That was iconic.
Can I give my one like super positive take on this best novel list as a whole, though?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
There is nothing on this list that I'm not going to read.
Oh yeah,
there are years when I make a call that like I'm just not going to read that one, or I'm not going to read those two. I will read every book on this list. There's nothing on here that I'm like, no.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that A Master of Jin is on the short list. I love Clark's writing, so I'm really glad that his first novel is going to be on here. I'm really, like I mentioned, I'm really excited about Light from Uncommon Stars, and then also maybe Desolation Called Peace being on the ballot will finally get me to read the first book.
I mean, I own 3 of these.
Wow.
And I have read one of these. And
I've read one. The one I've read is The Galaxy and the Ground Within, and I really liked it. I thought it was just a beautiful little sort of, I don't know, it was a book that I read at the right time, which influenced my feelings about it, but it's possibly my favorite of the Wayfarer series.
I severely want to read it. I've only read A Master of Jin out of these nominees. I have read like 60% of A Desolation Called Peace, which I parked at some point. But like that isn't a strike against the book because I was enjoying the book. It was just I was in a headspace that didn't allow for me to finish it at the time, which I will have to do. But I'm actually like I love P. J. Clark's writing, but I wasn't a huge fan of the novel. Like, I'm probably in the minority in that because I like there was so many things about it that there were so many cool ideas, and the execution was just kind of like it didn't just carry it fully through to me.
I was surprised to actually see it make the list because I feel like all of the reviews that I was hearing about it all year long was very mediocre, very tepid. Like, it's okay, but everyone was saying they figured out the like middle of the book, so they figured it out way before the reveal. And I heard a lot of, the characters are good, the setting is good, but it's just not a very engaging story. So I was also kind of surprised to see this one make the novel list, but not the best series list, because I think it was eligible for best series.
I don't
also.
think
Is it?
No, it's not. It doesn't have the word count.
Because the first two were too short.
Yeah, so the first one was a short story, and the second one was a novella, so it didn't hit the word count. I think it would need like another novel and another novella to make word count.
Okay, because I thought it was 2 novellas and then a novel, which I thought was enough.
The first one's a novelette.
Yeah.
So it's shorter than a novella.
Yeah.
And it's free to read online. And I remember I read it back when it was relatively new, and I remember loving that story. So if anyone's unaware that A Dead Jin in Cairo is free to read online, it is. Look it up. It's free to read.
On tor.com.
Yeah. And it's also like if you have a Scribd membership, there's also an audiobook version of it as well, which is actually pretty good. That's how I first read it.
Yeah.
I am feeling actually a little bit tepid about this category this year, and maybe it's because like the ones that I really care about I've already read, and I'm not surprised to see them here on the short list. I mean, Desolation Called Peace is like, you know, I was only ever going to be disappointed if that one didn't make it. And I've already DNF'd one of these as well. So
Which one?
A Light from Uncommon Stars.
Oh, wow.
Which was a case of not that it was bad, it just did not work for me. I didn't really get into it. So I could probably be convinced to try it again, but people who've read it have told me like you probably wouldn't get more out of it. So
Yeah, I want to hold on. I'm gonna look up because I can't remember what I nominated. So I'm now interested to see.
I know that I nominated the Unbroken by C.L. Clarke, which is like I'm hoping to see the long list numbers, like if anyone else nominated it.
Yeah, I
Excited for that.
nominated A Marvelous Light. That was one that I
I
nominated.
nominated that one too.
Oh, so I think I did. I think I definitely read it. I don't remember if I nominated it, but I think I did.
I have A Marvelous Light on my shelf. I need to read it, but I haven't yet.
It's delightful.
The thing about A Marvelous Light, I wasn't totally expecting to see it on here. My takeaway was I thought it worked better as a romance novel than as a fantasy novel. So I wasn't expecting to see it on an SFF novel shortlist, but I wouldn't have been displeased to see it there.
Yeah. I nominated that one because I just loved it. It gave me good vibes. It's maybe not the best reason,
But yeah, like aside from like Light from Uncommon Stars and She Who Became the Sun, aside from those two, I feel like this is okay. Well, maybe the Andy Weir as well, but like this seems a very like what's the word? Expected.
maybe, yeah. So this is about the too much romance and A Marvelous Light. I'm going to say this might not really matter because you may notice that The World of the White Rat is in the best series category, and those are all fantasy romances.
But see, I
It's
think
blinking, okay?
so. I think
But
with,
it's Ursula Vernon.
that's what I was gonna say. Like, I think for that, it's less a case for the Hugos being okay with fantasy romance and more of being like the Hugos love Ursula Vernon.
But also, I think the best series category is a different can of worms from best
It
novel.
is.
I think there's a different group of people nominating for it. Like I nominated the third book in the Kingston cycle, Soulstar, for best novel, but also the series for best series. And I'm not even remotely surprised that series ended up in best series, but the book didn't end up in best novel. Like, there's just I don't know. I don't have evidence to back up this take.
But I have a thought on some of the best series nominees as well for this year, but we'll get to that. So, hello, Paul. You've missed.
You have not missed much. We're still talking the first category, which is best novel.
Because the fiction categories take us the longest.
I know.
So I don't hate this list, but literally 0 of my nominees made it. So I was a little sad about that.
What did you nominate?
I nominated Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. Not the minute for you. Hang on, I always blank when I try to think of it.
I don't know if I still have my list or not.
Oh, Sorrowland. I was kind of surprised to not see Sorrowland by River Sullivan. Far from the Latest Heaven by Sade Thompson. A Memory Theater by Karen Tidbeck, and Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. And then I read after the nomination period Half Sick of Shadows, which I think I would have considered nominating if I had read it before the nomination period. And I think my 5th one was Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee.
Another one that ended up in best series.
I'm going to attempt another take here. You don't know if this is a hot take or a cold take. Best novel seems to often skew towards science fiction. and this is a little bit more of a science fiction heavy list, whereas like the list you just mentioned and also the things I nominated were predominantly fantasy. And
the novella and short story categories this year are 75% fantasy.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
This was a much better year for fantasy than science fiction, personally. Yeah. And I prefer science fiction. I read more science fiction than fantasy this year, but I preferred a lot of the fantasy I read.
I agree, because when I went through it, what I wanted to nominate, I noticed that most of what I felt strongly about nominating was fantasy, interestingly.
Yeah, I nominated some things that I knew just didn't have a chance. Like honestly, I nominated Winterkeep for Best Novel, even though it's also YA, because it was my favorite thing of the year I had read at the point I nominated.
If Naomi Novik can get her adult novel on the Lodestar, I don't see a problem with getting...
we can't get a YA book on Best Novel.
It's objectively a fantastic book. I agree. It was one of my favorites of last year.
But I knew it didn't have a chance. I'm disappointed it's not on the list.
So
we will get there. We will get there.
I'm just asking that. I know that we were supposed to do the order of best novel and stuff.
But I will hold my rant.
Okay.
I did nominate the Graceling Realms for best series. Just
Me too.
I left Winterkeep, and I also think, and maybe this might transition us to best series, but I think what the Graceling Realm does in terms of how she approaches it as a series is really interesting, in terms of having different different main characters for each book.
Okay. We're going to get another chance next year, though, because this year.
Yeah,
I'm so excited.
Do we want to transition to talking about best series, since that kind of fits in with novel?
Yep.
Okay. Sure.
All right, so we're going to skip ahead briefly. Best series. The nominees in this category are The Greenbone Saga by Fonda Lee, The Kingston Cycle by C.L. Polk, Merchant Princes by Charles Stross, Terra Ignota by Ada Palmer, Wayward Children by Shannon Mcguire, and The World of the White Rat by T. Kingfisher, aka Ursula Vernon. So pretty much my only opinion on this category is that so many of the big popular series that were nominated before are ineligible, that I feel like some things appeared on the list this year because people were like, what else? What else is, eligible? And so I did not expect to see something like The World of the White Rat, because it is so heavily romance, even though it's Ursula Vernon.
I was expecting it because it's Ursula Vernon and it's the series. People I was just looking at the Lady Business Google Doc list of what's eligible when I was nominating, and it's there was not a ton that was very high profile that was eligible this year, and I was honestly expecting World of the White Rat. I haven't read any of those books yet. I have a bunch of them. I have 3 of them, I think. I'm going to binge the ones I have and hope that there are more in the voter packet, I'm sure. But I think Ursula Vernon, her following are all, I think, very involved in the Hugo process. So there's her fans are all nominating her, and
much like Shannon Mcguire.
The Venn diagram of Hugo voters and Shannon Mcguire and Ursula Vernon fans is basically a one big circle.
Yeah. I also think with Ursula Vernon, it might also be that if she wins, she's you're going to be getting a good acceptance rate. So I'm wondering if for some people that might be playing into it too, because it's look, she's going to be fun. Why not? And I don't want to say that as a way to minimize her writing, but I think that might be an extra consideration.
I mean, this is a fan community.
Yeah.
It's a fan voted award. What do you expect? Come on, it's going to be fun. Yeah.
I will say the least surprising one for me is the Greenbone Saga.
Because it has been making the rounds.
Yeah,
especially this last year.
Yeah, that one was not surprising for me. I was surprised about Charles Stross, but that might just be because the one book I read from him, I felt very mediocre.
That
Someone
is
needs to tell me
one-
something about this series, because I know
What is
nothing
it?
about this series, and I was so confused because I'm going to go on a bit of a rant here. It's listed on the Hugo ballot as Merchant Princes. But when I look up Goodreads, the Merchant Princes series is the one that ended years ago, and the one with the eligible work is the sequel series, and then like the overall universe is the Merchant Princes universe, according to Goodreads. So the way it is listed here on the ballot is very confusing to me.
Yeah.
Someone needs to tell me how many of these books I need to read, and like, do I need to start with the old ones, or like, should I just give up and not read any of them? Are they terrible?
I feel bad, but I'm honestly planning on not reading them because, again, I read I think it was Neptune's Brood.
Ugh. Well, let's not talk about that.
And I did not like it. I did not like that book.
Give people some perspective on that book. I stopped reading it when the woman started having sex with her spaceship. Nothing more needs to be said. Also, I feel like it was
very
so
Farscape
covered
of
in like
them.
spandex and like fake leather or something. It just gave this like almost like sex dungeon and space vibe to me, and I did not like it.
The only
Anyway,
author I trust
I don't know. You're
to
kind of
write, well, there are authors I trust to write sex scenes with a spaceship. I'm just going to say that.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
weirdly, you're
I
making me
have to
feel
trust
more interested in it by that
No,
description. Like,
no.
not necessarily in a good way, but more like in a way this is going to be so bad that it's entertaining way. Maybe.
Maybe. Anyway, Kristen had a thought. What were you going to say?
Oh, I was just going to say, I had not heard of Merchant Princes or World of the White Rat, and I had the same issue with World of the White Rat, where Goodreads does not even have, like, when you search that on Goodreads, nothing comes up. So I literally had to Google it and figure out it's like multiple series that are all in this universe. So I also need guidance on which one to start with that one. Like, can you just start with either series?
You can jump in at the beginning of any of the sub-series, and Sword Heart is a standalone at the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
The thing about the name of the series of the universe actually is that it did not have a name until a couple of months ago, as far as I know. I think Ursula Vernon was being asked about it during the nomination season and was like, I don't know.
That should tell us something, though.
Well, I mean, it could be that for Ursula Vernon, she was more thinking about it in terms of like the individual stories.
Yeah.
And people wanted to
Now,
nominate it for
I have read all of them, and I do actually feel like they are all very strongly part of the same universe, and I have no problem with that universe, that world being nominated. But I think that's actually the problem of this category in some ways, is that it's so overwhelming, especially when you have series like Merchant Princes or heck, the Vorkosigan saga. I think that was the first winner of this category, where there are so many books over so many decades. Like, how do you even read them? How do you decide where to start, and how do you get access to all the books if they're not all on the voter packet? It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I feel like I understand with the Best Hugo series, like something like the Vorkosigan saga was what they had in mind when they created it. So like a long-running series that people view as like greater than the sum of its parts. So even though like with Vorkosigan, some of the books won Best Novel, it's more of like a way to award the author for a larger body of work. So it's interesting that most people tend to just nominate like trilogies or quartets, all the
which kind of like goes to like to me it's like, well, it's like the award is rewarding an author for like an extended piece of work, like long running work. Then why? Because we already have the Astounding Award and stuff for the new author. Why then don't we just have an award for like established authors with like long-running series as well?
We do. The Nebula Award has them. They're like the SFF Grandmaster Awards.
Yeah, but
World
like
Fantasy has it too. They're lifetime achievement things. Just Hugo's doesn't have one.
Yeah,
Can I say
not specifically speaking about Hugo's.
Kelsey?
About shorter series like trilogies, which become eligible on the third book. So like Trilogy Award. I am actually happy when I see trilogies on this list, even if it's not what was the intent of the award, just because it is like the Kingston cycle this year, which I kept nominating those. I don't think I read the second book in time to nominate it last year, but like I nominated the first one, I nominated the third one for best novel. None of them were making it to the shortlist in best novel, but this gives those books a chance to be recognized upon the conclusion of a trilogy. And I really like that for some of these series that haven't gotten the best novel recognition that perhaps I thought they deserved. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, so Adri, I think this is Adri who's saying this. I can't pull up the comment, but best series is an award to an author, though it's a series, a shared universe with multiple authors would be eligible. And that's an interesting point. And
that is interesting, but also even more overwhelming than what we currently have going on in the nominee list.
Was Wild Cards a nominee in a past year?
I don't know. Please don't put that out into existence.
I've never read any of them, but it's the first one that came to mind. I'm sorry.
No, it's more of like I'm still mad at George R. Martin, and I don't want to. And I know it's other authors writing it, but I'm just like I'm still mad at you. I don't want to read anything you're affiliated with. Oh, it's a kid. Another void. Another void.
Okay, so Alexi Harrow is like the author I would trust first. Oh no, you're stepping on my thorax.
I just want to say Elliot de Bodard was the author I was thinking of when I said authors I trust to write sex with spaceships.
I mean, the mind ships are like, they are actually born of human beings, and they're people and personalities and everything. Like, they are actually people. Whereas the Charles Stross one was not, no.
I am not going to say what popped into my mind. I'm just going to blank it from my brain.
Yeah, I will say I am glad. Like I'm saying this as someone who does love Sean Mcguire's works. I am glad there's only one of her works on this ballot, because I know both Wayward Children and Encrypted were eligible this year. So I'm glad that it's just one, because I think one, that'd be overwhelming, and two, it gives someone else who might not be a repeated best series nominee a chance to be on the ballot.
Then again, I think Sean Mcguire is still nominated in multiple categories this year.
Is. I'm saying that in this one, that for best series, it's the fact that she only had one of her 2 eligible works this year on the ballot.
Yeah. What was her other eligible one this year?
Is it October Day?
No, October Day was last year.
Okay. She has so many series. It's like I can't keep up.
Was anyone surprised to not see Dandelion Dynasty on here? I was kind of expecting
I nominated Dandelion Dynasty actually for best series.
I was surprised, but I'm wondering if one, there because of that long gap between books, and two, people might be waiting.
I am expecting it actually that it might make like 2023, because the last book, Speaking Bones, is coming out this year.
That's what I was
so
going to say.
It might get on the slot next year.
That's what I was going to say, is I think it's going to be on next year's best series, because the final book is coming out later this year.
But I did try.
Another one I was sort of thinking I might see was the Sunland books. The Sunland Ascends, the Babel, the Tower of Babel books.
Mm. Was there a book that came out last year so that it would have been eligible?
I'm pretty sure the last one
for Senlin.
Yeah,
I think so.
Yeah, I did nominate Graceling Realms, like I mentioned earlier. Was the Penrick and Desdemona series eligible this year?
I think those may no longer be eligible because The World of the Five Gods won the second year in this category.
Okay.
I don't actually remember all the rules for this category, but I'm
No, but
pretty
I
sure if you
think that
win-
would
yeah.
you're ineligible. I think like once you win, it permanently removes it, even if books later are published later on.
Yeah. Now I
this
did.
is this
I
is
did
the
nom-
thing. Can I
Go ahead.
ask a question? I don't want to. I'll ask my question later.
Okay. I did nominate The Assassins of Thassalon in Best Novel because it was eligible. So.
Okay,
Has anyone read Terra Ignota? Because I have not read that one, but it looks really interesting.
I haven't. I think it was Ira who didn't like it, and
Rachel?
What?
Okay. I have read the first 3, and the only reason I haven't read the beast of a final book is because, okay, one, it's huge, and I'm scared, but also I need to reread the first 3, and they are, I think they're an acquired taste, is how I would put it. They're really fantastic science fictions, basically like around philosophy and the Age of Enlightenment. It's really good, but it is hard to get into.
Doesn't it have something to do with Shakespeare at some point?
No.
Or why am I picturing Shakespeare somewhere?
probably because
More French Enlightenment thinkers
Oh,
and
okay.
Renaissance
Okay.
and stuff like that.
Do
Yeah.
are the titles Shakespeare quotes? I should know this, but I think this might be a series where at least I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I've forgotten like all of my Shakespeare quotes since college. It's embarrassing.
At least you had Shakespeare quotes.
I've had this book like since it was new, since it was released, and it's one of those books where I haven't picked it up because I know I could love it if I read it when I'm in the right mood. And like I have seen enough reviews of it that I sort of know for me what mood that has to be, and I haven't managed to pick the book up when I am in the mood. So I am desperately hoping that the mood strikes before Hugo voting closes this year, because I'm not going to read it if I'm in the wrong headspace, because I know I have to be in the right headspace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, out of this category, I'm probably trying to prioritize the Kingston Cycle because I just finished The Midnight Bargain by C.L. Polk, and it has so far been one of the best things I've read all year. And then the Greenbone Saga because I already own the first 2 books, so it would be easier to pick up. I'm definitely not going to go for Wayward Children because I have actively hated that series, and I don't think that me trying to read it for this category would like help. I don't think I'm suddenly going to fall in love with it, so I'm just gonna
I
ignore.
admit that I am very picky about what I actually choose to be complete on in this category. It really depends on, like, you know, if I haven't already started reading the series and if I care about it, like I'm not going to. So I'm not going to be reading Merchant Princes. I'm not even going to dive into that. But will I try to finish off Terra Ignota? Probably. Will I catch up on Wayward Children because I'm only like 2 novellas behind? Yeah. One of them is in the novella category, so why not? But it's like strategies for approaching this category. I don't think it's possible to read everything unless you happen to be that super rare person who has already read 90% of the books.
I am a somewhat irresponsible voter in this category because I'm the person who will absolutely totally vote on the strength of having only read 1 book in a series.
I have done that.
Am I being incredibly blasphemous if I try to look up like Wikipedia synopsis for every single book that is in the series, because that would save up time? Not that I'm going to do that. I'm just saying.
Yeah, and I think it's perfectly valid. Like if it's a universe, it's a world, and not like a discrete series like a trilogy, then by all means go and find a starting point in a sub-series and, you know, read 3 books and call it good. You have limited time.
That was the thing that I was going to say earlier, but then didn't. So with large series with sub-series, we talked about the Penrick and Desdemona novella series being ineligible because the overarching series had already won. I know that it probably just depends on what people vote for, but I would always, I think, rather see a sub-series be nominated than the overarching series, because it's more of an it tells you, what am I trying to say? I think it's because there is like a set of
Boundaries help.
work, and there tends to be like a lot of difference, or depending on the author, there can be a large amount of difference between the works within subseries.
Yeah, and
the
I mean,
universe, and it
if
helps.
you, sorry.
Yeah, no, I like to know what I'm voting for, and like, should I be voting on the strength of the recent books or the older books, or
It's specificity helps, basically.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like Vorkosigan Saga is a good example for me because I freaking love that series, and it's one of the most highly decorated series in Hugo Award history, basically, with individual books winning and being nominated. But it became eligible because of the very last book being published, and I thought it was one of the weakest.
It's interesting, and I don't want to sidetrack. I actually really love Gentleman Joel and the Red Queen, but that was because it felt like a very good ending of a series.
I agree with that. I still just did not love it as much as like the middle books, but anyway. But that's another problem. It's like, are people taking the chance to nominate it when it is eligible, just because they really, really want to acknowledge it, or because that recent book was good, or because the first couple were good but didn't get Hugo Awards, that sort of thing?
I feel like that's kind of a lot, like something that pops up not just in the Hugos, but like for the Academy Awards for acting, for example. Like sometimes someone will, like a actor who's been nominated multiple times but hasn't won, will finally win for something that isn't necessarily like their best piece of work. But
like Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, but give them the award for something that, like, as a recognition for their entire body of work.
Do we still want to talk about the best series, or want to go for the best novella?
Let's go to best novella, because I see folks have moved on to that in the chat.
Okay, all right. Novella. The nominees are Across the Green Grass Fields by Seanan Mcguire, Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky, Fireheart Tiger by Aliette de Bodard, The Past is Red by Catherine M. Valente, A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers, and A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. I've only read 2 of these, shockingly. Usually I've read all of them when they're nominated, but this is a weird category for me this year.
Yeah, I only read Psalm for the Wild Built and Fireheart Tiger. I'm going to be honest, without having read the other ones, my top choice is Psalm for the Wild Built, because that book was like the case of what Kelsey was saying about the Chambers novel, like perfect book at the perfect time for me. And it just like hit all the right notes and was one of my favorites of last year.
I am probably most excited in this category because I have not actually read any of these, but I want to, because the novella category is quite easy to get through in terms of like length. And I know that at least 4 of these have audiobooks out, so that makes it even more easy to get into them. But Fireheart Tiger and Psalm for the Wild Built are ones that I actually have been wanting to read anyway. And Alexi Harrow is tough for me because I mean, I have read her short fiction or their short fiction, like when they had like short stories nominated earlier, and I have not liked any of them yet.
I have a thought about the Alexi Harrow in the short story category. We'll get to that, but I haven't read enough of her work to.
I have really liked some of her work. I read A Spindle Splintered and I was underwhelmed by it. I think in part because like it seems like the fairy tale book that should have been written for me, a little bit nerdy and scholarly on the fairy tale stuff, and like, ooh, I want it. And I've been thinking since I read it about why it didn't work for me. I think it ended up like, it set up a very interesting premise and then it fell back on just being a fairly straightforward portal fantasy, and I wanted more from it. I wanted more stylistically. I wanted more intellectually. I don't know.
My feeling was that it was perfectly enjoyable, acceptable, but it wasn't astounding in any way. And I didn't nominate it for this category. I don't feel like it's award worthy, if that makes sense. But I think like if you're just looking for a nice read, it's perfectly satisfactory as that.
I'm honestly a little disappointed in a couple of things with this category. One is the fact that it's a once again entirely Tor.com category.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
And it's just
Novella Awards had Neon Hemlock or something in there.
yeah, and I'm disappointed because I haven't read Neon Hemlock. I have friends who have, and they really like the stuff that Neon Hemlock's been publishing, and they're like a more recent small press, and so it would have been really great for them to be on the Hugos. And I know like Subterranean Press has been doing a lot of novellas as well, so it's just really disappointing that it's so heavily dominated by Tor. And the other thing is just how white this category is, and this is so glaring, especially when you look at, for comparison, best novel and best series. Like there is only one author of color on this list, and there were more authors of color publishing novellas last year. Like
I would also say that when it comes to like Subterranean Press, I know that access is a big deal because like Subterranean Press, like for example, doesn't publish ebook versions of their books outside the US.
Okay.
Or they do a staggered release. So for example, as a Finnish person, I have a huge difficulty getting my hands on any Subterranean Press publications, which means I can't read them, which means I can't nominate them. The only exception is that if my library system for some stroke of luck happens to get physical copies, which is sometimes also hard because Subterranean Press, I think, does numbered editions. So they have a limited release of their novellas.
Mm-hmm.
So access is a huge thing, and I think it's like, honestly, I don't necessarily want to invoke the world, but I would call Subterranean Press a luxury publisher.
They're
at this stage.
specifically limited edition collectors edition things, exactly.
The other thing is that like small presses in general, and there are plenty of them doing novellas, are never going to have the reach that Tor.com has. And this is a sort of, populist voting award. A lot. The more marketing reach you have, the better your chances. And it just strikes me that none of the other big publishers are doing novellas. Saga was doing it for a while. Saga did This Is How You Lose the Time War. They won, then they fired their editor, and they stopped doing novellas. And they
are doing a novella this year with Rebecca Rowanhorse. It's in November, I believe.
Okay.
Ooh, don't know about this.
But like they didn't have any last year that I saw.
I wish more publishers got like behind more like short fiction stuff anyway, because I think like there's like a certain number of publishers who are even putting out short fiction in general, like and putting money behind short fiction.
And I mean, Tor.com has proven that you can be successful at it.
Yeah.
And I think maybe publishers were not publishing shorter fiction because they just thought it wasn't worth it. And clearly it can be.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I did, there was the Indiegogo campaign for Neon Hemlock's catalog for like this year. And I did go and like subscribe for the whole year's catalog for the ebook edition.
KJ says that Solaris has started on novellas. I might have looked into that.
That's
I have certainly enjoyed Solaris / Rebellion stuff over the years, so that'd be good. So, in this category, I'm most like my two nominees that made it were Elder Race and A Psalm for the Wild Built. So those are the only two that I have read. I am curious if people have read the Past is Red. Because I've heard nothing about it, surprisingly, even though it's by Valente, and I skipped it on purpose because I think it's in a universe with a short story that I absolutely hated.
I haven't read it, but I think the short story is part of the novella. I think it's an expansion upon the short story.
Okay, that may be why I did not attempt to read it.
I haven't read it yet. I'm planning to, so I have no opinions.
That's the only one of my nominees that made the list, so I'm really happy about that one. I loved
I'm
it.
actually
Talk it up to me.
Yeah. So the first half is the previously published, I think, what is The Future is Blue. So that's the first half, and then there's the second half tacked on. And I didn't buy into it immediately. Like, I was kind of like, and I think the first half I was kind of, I hadn't bought into it. But by the end, I loved it. I had totally bought into it. I was sad that it ended. I loved how philosophical it was. I loved how imaginative it was. And I don't think it was necessarily completely believable, but I didn't care. And I got really wrapped up in it. I liked the tone and the feel of it. And for me, Catherine Valente is a new author that I kind of discovered this year. So I'm excited to read more of her stuff. I actually preferred her other novella, Comfort Me with Apples, to this one. So I nominated both of them, but at least this one made it. I also, with Adrian Tchaikovsky, I preferred One Day All This Will Be Yours to Elder Race, and I nominated that one, but whatever, we have Elder Race.
I had heard nothing whatsoever about Elder Race. Like, I was aware of it, that it existed, but I know nothing about it. So if I read it, I will be going in blind.
I haven't read One Day This Will All Be Yours. It's on my list to get to now that my library actually has it. Elder Race is the first novella by Tchaikovsky that I was impressed by. I felt very let down, and kind of like his novellas were incomplete in some way in the past. And so that's why I ended up nominating Elder Race. I don't know if it's the strongest thing in this category, but I'm a sucker for the, it looks like fantasy, but it's really sci-fi sort of thing. And it was more satisfying by the end than his other novellas have been for me. So
yeah, that was really clever.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's clever. I liked how he did that. I think on the whole, I didn't love the novella. I thought it was just okay, but I'm not sad to see it on the list.
Yeah. I think somebody said that it might be his first Hugo nomination as well, which kind of surprises me, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Did Children of Ruin make it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I know Children of Time won the Clark Award, and the sequel may have also been nominated for the Clark Award, but I feel too many awards.
I have this weird feeling, foggy memory of maybe Adrian Tchaikovsky making it to the long list.
I feel like he's been on the long list before.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Okay, novelette?
Sure.
All right. The best novelette nominees are Bots of the Lost Ark by Suzanne Palmer, Colors of the Immortal Palette by Carolyn M. Joachim, L'Esprit de l'Escalier by Catherine M. Valente, O2 Arena by Ogunachowe Donald Apeki, That Story Isn't the Story by John Wiswell, and Unseelie Brothers Limited by Fran Wild. There's a lot of Uncanny Magazine in this category and in the next one.
Yup.
I haven't read any of these, so I have nothing to add.
I have not read any of these, but there's a lot of authors here that I sort of trust enough to be excited to read them, so that's something.
I mean, I am Ekpeki's Story is, I think, the first time an African author is being nominated for a novelette, at least from what I read from their Twitter. This was like some of the firsts in like their nominations, which was interesting. But I also follow them on Twitter, and they're hoot. So I have been interested in reading their stuff. So now's a good excuse to start.
Yeah, I've read Bots of the Lost Ark, but I haven't read any of the other ones. But Fit to Be Read just posted a video, I think this morning or last night, kind of saying this category is really strong in all of them. He was really positive about all of them. So I'm looking forward to eventually reading all of these.
I think a lot of these are actually, I think at least O2 Arena is like available for like like it's available online for I don't even
all
think you have to
nominees
pay
in
for
the
it.
novelette and short story categories are available for free online. There are a couple you should just Google to go straight to them, but yeah, they're all available, which is why I read all of them in the past 2 days. So
What did you think?
Yeah, you can actually share your thoughts on like
based on some people's opinions in the chat, I'm about to be a little bit unpopular. So my favorites in this category are Bots of the Lost Ark, the French one, L'Esprit de l'Escalier. I apologize to any French speakers in the audience. And That Story Isn't the Story were my favorites. I did not like O2 Arena, though I will just skip over this one briefly to say that that's kind of a personal thing. It does deal with a secondary character dying of cancer, and so I think there should have been a trigger warning on that one. It just wasn't my thing as well. And then Colors of the Immortal Palette. I often feel this way about some stories by particular authors in Uncanny Magazine, where the story feels more like style over substance. This was very pretty, but I did not care about the art. I think a lot of it is based around Impressionist era artwork or that sort of style. I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything about the art world. And a lot of it focused around a woman thinking about a man, and I just didn't care. And then Unseelie Brothers Limited is another one where I felt also like it was kind of style over substance. That's actually something I've kind of struggled with Fran Wild's writing in the past, where I'm like, it's very pretty, but I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from it. This one was only interesting to me because is it just me, or has Fran Wild been watching Costube? It's about dresses and dressmaking and like a
now I kind of want to read the story.
You know, I think you might actually really like it, Rhea. It's basically about magical dresses, and so I kind of liked the story within it, but it would not have been something I would have picked up to just read for fun if it wasn't on the list. The ones that I really liked, Bots of the Lost Ark is a shoo-in. It is actually a sequel story to The Secret Lives of Bots, which was a nominee in 2018 in this category, or the short story category. And I remember loving it and actually nominating at that time. So it is an extremely fun, slightly ridiculous adventure about Bot 9 saving the ship again. So it is really good fun to read.
Reread Secret Life of Bots to read
this.
You don't need. I know
to.
I read it and I don't remember a thing about it.
There's a couple of references to it that might jog your memory, but it's not super important to remember the previous story.
My eyes deceive me now as I'm looking at the nominees in the last is Catherine M. Valente nominated in 3 separate categories?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
She's very prolific. I don't know how she does it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
There's a lot of prolific authors on the list this year, actually.
Valente's
I don't know how any of them do it.
Yeah, she's an author who doesn't. I've tried a couple of her novels and they haven't worked for me, so I don't know if it would be different at a smaller dose.
Mm-hmm.
I have only read one thing from Catherine M. Valente, and I still talk about this after all these years, which is Palimpsest. And I know that not many people it's such a divisive book, but I freaking loved it when I read it. But for some reason, I have never picked up anything else from her, even though I keep borrowing stuff from the library that she's written, and then I never get to them. And then I'm like, well, maybe next time. It's like,
I freaking adored the entire Fairyland series, and also the In the Night Garden and In the Cities of Coin and Spice duology, which strike me as sort of the grown-up version of the same sort of thing, but they're not for everyone. If you don't like that type of writing, you're going to bounce off of those books. But I haven't universally adored everything of hers, but some of her stuff I really love.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I read.
Thomas actually has a good description here.
I mean, I would agree that Cat Valenti's writing is very like rich, and you need to be in the mood for rich things to be able to appreciate it.
So I quite liked her novelette in this category, and I really disliked her short story nominee. Actually, I'm always extremely split on Valente because her style is so rich and baroque and complicated, and the stories that I like by her are ones where that style fits very well with the topic and the length of the story, or where she does seem to fine tune it a little bit to match better. The ones that I don't like by her are just where it's like, this is a bit of a mess. This wasn't reined in enough. It wasn't tailored enough to what you're talking about or whatever. The reason I liked L'Esprit de Escalier was because it kind of, it's like a modern day retelling of Orpheus and Eurydice, where like all these gods and deities and stuff are in the modern day, and they're basically like celebrities and musicians and influencers and stuff. And Orpheus is a dick because he brought his wife back from the dead without asking her if she wanted to be. It has this very mythic feel that's also crazily modern, and the style works within that, I guess.
Okay, now you kind of got me interested in it because I adore Orpheus and Eurydice, mostly because I have been playing Hades for the third time, and like I enjoy everything that has to do with them. But yeah.
Like space opera. Yes.
I did. Space opera felt like she was trying to be Douglas Adams, but like even more extra, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Also, I did try to read space opera, and I DNF'd it at the time, and because it was built like this whole like Eurovision contest in space, but like that book felt very like there was actually very little of the Eurovision, or it didn't give me the Eurovision vibe.
I wanted more of the actual contest.
Yeah, I mean,
it happened very quickly at the end, and
so
we didn't see any of the other entries.
Also, like Eurovision is all about like being bombastic and like batshit everything. Like it's like go big or go home, and it just didn't deliver, which is weird because her books usually, like her writing style is go big or go home. Like it's like
you have to know when it's too much, basically. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do we go to best short story category next?
Sure. Yeah. We've already been talking a little bit about it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So best short story, I have opinions in this category too. Let's see. Wrong tab, Rachel. Let's close this tab that I shouldn't be reading from. Mr. Death by Alexi Harrow. Proof by Induction by Jose Pablo Iriarte. The Son of America by Catherine M. Valente. Tangles by Shannon Mcguire. Unknown Number by Blue Neustifter. Sorry.
Neustifter.
And Where Oaken Hearts Do Gather by Sarah Pinsker. I have opinions.
Let's hear them.
Okay, let's get Son of America out of the way because we were just talking about Valente. I did not like this one.
What is it about?
That's a great question. I think the reason why other people have enjoyed this story is because it is thought-provoking if you really care about this question of what is the Son of America? What is it? I don't think the story is very clear about that. But it can start 100 different conversations probably. Basically, a woman is selected to eat the Son of America. She eats it in an all-American diner, and then it's like the modern day lottery. Everybody comes out and beats her to death in the street. This is one of the last ones I read out of the novelette and the short story categories, and I noticed like about half of these stories had to do with death or death by violence in some way or another, and I was getting a bit tired of it. But this like all-American thing mashed together with Valente's go big or go home style. It was so much description and then very violent, and I didn't get it.
This was the only one that I nominated, and I thought it was fantastic. I feel like
speaking as a non-American, the sin of America could be any number of things.
Well, I think what she's trying to do is she's trying to take these feelings of guilt that Americans have, that we have all of this sin, obviously, and it's not just one thing, it's a lot of things. There's, racial injustice, police brutality, just generational everything, imperialism, all this stuff. It's really bad, right? And we don't like to deal with it. And so in her story, she has us deal with it by blaming a person. And I think she's saying, like, we tend to do this in real life. We pick a scapegoat, and the news media focuses on this scapegoat, and that makes us all feel better. It's like, it's not our fault, it's their fault, and we can all blame them and make them take all the punishment, and then we keep having the sin. It doesn't go away. But I don't know. So I thought it was really thought-provoking and incisive and well done. My take.
I actually agree with all of that. Yeah. I think that's why it's a nominee.
I haven't finished reading any of these stories, but I did start reading Where Oaken Hearts Do Gather, and I've gotten like maybe a little over a third of the way. Whoa, why am I getting an echo? Did you hear that, or was that just on my side?
I did hear
it.
that.
I heard it.
It might be because you moved or something.
Weird. It seems to be gone now. Anyways, I got maybe about a third of the way through it, and I am just like squealing at every line because it is so clearly my thing. Like, it feels like it's for me because of all of like folklore nerdery and all of the footnotes. I'm like, I can't, no matter where this goes by the end, I can't imagine anything on this list like beating this experience for me because I am having so much fun.
Where Oaken Hearts Do Gather is definitely going to get my vote in this category. There was a different story in the same kind of like footnote or citation style. It was a Sarah Gailey story, I think.
Brett, are you thinking of Brett?
It was a novelette or a short story in either Hugo or Novella.
I'm liking this way better than Stet, if Stet is the story we're thinking of, because it is specifically this sort of folklore nerdery that, like, ooh, this speaks to me.
Mm-hmm. So we won't talk too much. If you haven't finished it, I don't want to like potentially.
Please don't spoil it for me. I am enjoying the ride.
This is my favorite, and like I went into it a bit skeptical because I wasn't sure. I have not been super impressed by experimental form short fiction before. Like, I didn't think that Stet worked very well for me, but maybe not because of the style. But Sarah Pinsker has done other experimental short stories before that I loved. And the more I read of this one, I got really into it. I think she pulled off the format and the style really well. And it has actually a pretty good mystery, but I think the weakness of this one is that it's a little bit too subtle. I mean, I caught the reference to Wind Hollow Fair from Elizabeth Hand's Wilding Hall, but I don't think a lot of people are going to.
I won't, because I haven't read that book, but I'm still loving absolutely everything about it. So yeah, I don't need to catch all of the references to love this story.
I think it's one that would probably be better, and you might get more things out of it if you go back and reread it immediately, which I'm actually very tempted to. Because I read it very quickly, and I was like, oh, this is actually getting very interesting. And then I was like, it just sort of ends, and I think it's too vague. What did I miss? You know? But yeah, that's my favorite.
Yeah, I've been going through it like line by line with a fine-tooth comb, which is why I'm taking so much time with it.
Yeah. So for anybody going into the story who's maybe a bit confused about what it is, the entire thing is fiction. It is basically online comments and annotations of a folk song's lyrics. The folk song is fictional.
Yeah.
There is a recording of it that you can find in the story. Go listen to it. It's still fictional. It's, I believe, Sarah
Sarah
Pinsker.
Pinsker is a musician. I assume
Yeah, she
she's
is.
the one playing
Yeah,
in
so
singing.
I think it was wonderfully well thought out how she did it.
Also, it's like a multimedia type of thing.
Yeah. Which, you know what, with so many of the short stories being published online, like I want to see more people taking advantage of that, basically.
Sarah
So
Pinsker writes about music a lot, and she writes about it in all sorts of different contexts. Like she's done it in sci-fi. This is the first time I've seen her doing like anything about a folk ballad. But like music is sort of a running theme in her work.
Yeah, she just like there's a semi-recent novel that she wrote about basically the music industry
I
and
know
how
she did a song for a New Day.
it won the Nebula Award. Yeah. So other nominees, I was going to talk about the Alexi Harrow story, Mr. Death. There was a conversation in the chat about her stuff earlier. I think people who have an issue with her stories have a similar kind of issue. This is only the second thing I've ever read by her. So content warning, this is basically about a Grim Reaper and it involves the impending child death. I will leave it at that. This is a story I felt like was very emotional. Like it got me a little bit choked up by the end, but then I got mad because I felt like it was decently written, decently paced, but I feel like all the heavy lifting in the story was done by the subject matter. And that felt a little bit lazy. Like who isn't going to be brought to tears by a 2-year-old dying, you know? I don't know.
I mean, for me, what little of Harrow's works I've read, the problem that I always seem to have with them is that they're not developed enough. Like they have you have the basic concept, you have the characters, but it just doesn't click because there is not enough like development of these ideas, over there, like the basic inception of it, basically, which sometimes makes it just feel very hollow. Like, okay, you have this basic structure of a story, but like you don't do anything more with it to pull the reader in.
Yeah, I feel so. I haven't read anything by Harrow, but it's just very interesting to see her be consistently nominated because everything I've heard from people whose opinions I trust tends to border from this was fine, like I enjoyed it, but it didn't wow me, to I have some serious problems with certain things. And I know I saw it being discussed in the chat. I know Adri brought up some stuff in regards to the novella. As someone had mentioned, there was talk about with her novella in general this time. I've heard mixed things about both of her novels. So it's interesting to me that she's become this kind of consistent presence on the Hugo ballot over the last few years.
I don't know if Kelsey has anything to add. You've read?
I don't know. I haven't read this story yet. I loved the 10,000 Doors of January when I read it because it was one of those books that I just read at the right time for me, and it hit like a note that I really loved. But like in retrospect, I do see and accept the critiques of that book that I've seen. I have not yet read Once and Future Witches. That one wasn't nominated when it came out, was it?
Yeah, no.
Or was it? No.
But there's been like Harrow has had consistently like the short fiction category. She's had
short fiction. I think I will have more to say about A Spindle Splintered when I wrap it up, and we already talked about the novella category, so I don't necessarily want to go back and rehash that. I just thought that novella could have been so much more than it was given the premise.
Mm-hmm.
But I will be curious to read this one. I didn't I didn't read it when it came out and people were retweeting it and it was all over my Twitter feed. Mr. Death, this short story, just because I knew it was going to be a sad one and I didn't want to read a sad one. And I still might not, like if the mood doesn't strike where I can handle a sad one at any point during the Hugo reading period, I won't read it.
Yeah.
I have become so much of a mood reader since the pandemic, and I don't know, like I've been having a hard time navigating it because I did not used to be at all.
Yeah. No, I've felt that as well. Yeah. So other stories in this category, Proof by Induction by Jose Pablo Ariarte. I have read a couple of other stories by them in the past and liked them, but they've never left a huge impression on me. This one was good. I mean, I feel like it was a solid story. They're always a very like strong writer, like, you know, their style, their prose is just on point. I think they do short fiction well. They do that length well. This is another one about death and grief and moving on, basically. And it's also science fiction. It's one of the few sci-fi nominees in the short fiction category. So I liked it. I'm not sure I'm going to remember much of it in the future. And then Tangles by Seanan Mcguire, I feel like is my least favorite in this category, possibly.
You have to know anything about Magic the Gathering to read it, because I do not.
I'm going to say yes, because I read it, my eyes glazed over, and I just felt like it was completely... I don't typically find Seanan Mcguire's style to be invigorating and attention-getting. I felt like it was a very written by rote type of story, and was probably using characters and events that were already established, and I didn't know and I didn't care, and it just felt like a very cliche epic fantasy adventure.
Is this actually about Magic the Gathering?
I'm pretty sure because it was published on magicthegathering.com.
So
Yeah,
raise your hand. Raise your hand if you've ever played Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, so they've been
Okay.
the last few years commissioning authors to write free short fiction. Like Kate Elliott did some stuff with them several years ago. I know Kate Arsenal Rivera was doing stuff around the same time Seanan Mcguire was. I feel like this is very much a case of Seanan Mcguire asked on Twitter and it happened. Because I follow her and I remember her asking, like, if you're going to nominate, like, this would mean so much because I really want to write more Magic the Gathering.
I think it's skippable, and that's my hot take. The last one that we haven't talked about is Unknown Number by Blue Stifter. I saw some people were talking about this one in chat. It is the other more experimental story. It is a Twitter story. It is in the format of text messages in tweets. So it is a Twitter thread. I'll be honest, I feel like I might misstep a bit if I give an super unvarnished opinion on this one. It is it's a story about a trans woman getting a message from her alternate self in a different timeline who did not transition. I thought it was a very thin story. It felt mostly like a pep talk. It's just a text message conversation. There isn't that much characterization. There's not really world building.
This is the other one that I have read part of. And I'm going to tell you how this happened, which is that when it was released on Twitter, it got retweeted into my Twitter feed, but like only one of the middle ones without the note at the top. The first tweet says, you know, this is a work of fiction, obviously. But like I started reading it partway through the middle without knowing that, because I like this thing got randomly retweeted in my Twitter feed. I got to the point where I realized it was fiction. I was like, I have been played on the Bird app. I closed out of it in despair.
I just think it's really interesting that it was published on Twitter. Like, that's like...
I'm excited by the idea of it. I mean, certainly all of us have probably gone down the rabbit hole of finding a super interesting story thread on Twitter, being like, oh, this is so fun and everything. I think for me, the problem with this is that I have actually read far more entertaining fictional or fictionalized stories on Twitter that were just way more engaging. I mean, heck, one of them's been turned into a movie. This was okay.
Are we going to
I will finish reading it. Once I'm like emotionally prepared for the fact that it is
also it has a whole bunch of F-bombs, and I got kind of tired of that. That might be what irritated me more than anything, is just there's a lot of...
But it's Twitter, though.
That. Not everybody's Twitter feed.
Well, sure. But it's like, sometimes you expect that of Twitter. Rage sells.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Do we want to move on to the best graphic story or comic category? Because I have thoughts.
Yes. Okay, we're going to unleash Rhea here. Best graphic story or comic. The nominees are Die, Volume 4, Bleed, written by Kieran Gillen, art by Stephanie Hans, lettering by Clayton Cowles. Far Sector, written by N.K. Jamison, art by Jamal Campbell. Lore Olympus, Volume 1 by Rachel Smith. Monstrous Volume 6, The Vow, written by Marjorie Liu, art by Sana Takeda. Once and Future, Volume 3, The Parliament of Magpies, written by Kieran Gillen, illustrated by Dan Mora, colored by Tamara Bonvillain. And Strange Adventures, written by Tom King, art by Mitch Gerrards and Evan Doc Shaner.
Okay, so the only ones of these that I have not read are Monstrous Volume 6 and Strange Adventures. I have read Monstrous up to Volume 4, though. I have read Once and Future, the first 2 volumes and the first 3 volumes of Die, so I have not read the nominees. However, I am somewhat annoyed at like the state of this category, because there's so many like awesome things that are being produced. For example, there were 2 manga series that I did nominate volumes of for this category this year. The other being The Girl from the Other Side by Nagabe, and the other being Witch Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama. And I would have thought that Kamome Shirahama, being an Eisner-nominated and Eisner-winning artist and having worked with Marvel, could have had more sway in this category and actually gotten some of her stuff nominated. But I guess not, since everyone seems to be enamored with Kieran Gillen, even though, you know... I just have a lot of thoughts about Kieran Gillen. Like, he has interesting concepts, and they almost always flounder in the actual writing, because he, like, Die, the first volume was okay, and then it just became a complete chore. And also Once and Future, idea is okay, the reading experience is a complete chore. Wicked and the Divine, cool concept, cool ideas, the reading experience is a complete chore. And to be honest, for most part in all of Kieran Gillen's work, it's the artist that is carrying the whole thing and not the writing. Can we please stop nominating Kieran Gillen?
I really enjoyed The Wicked and the Divine. My only critique, I mean, like, I agree with you a bit on this. I think Kieran Gillen is way too wordy, to be honest. Yeah. He packs a lot of text into things.
Also, like, his characters are basically sound boxes for like ideas and not actual people.
Yeah.
And that's a problem with like across the board with his work. Like, you could basically like put any character from Die to like and like switch them with any character from Wicked and the Divine and Once and Future, because like they're just like speaker phones for his own ideas.
to me. I have liked how like high concept a lot of his stuff is. That's what drew me in with Wicked and the Divine. That's why I tried Die back in the day. I do think he stumbles in actually executing it and tends to achieve more when he stops being wordy and lets the artwork do its thing. But yeah.
I read the first volume of Die because I was trying to read the graphic novel Nominees, and I like deeply disliked it. It was everything I hate. So I really hate the whole let's take your Saturday morning cartoons and make it dark and gritty, because that's more, it did that, and I'm just like, I really hate this. And I also feel some kind of way about the genderqueer person being like kind of being the big bad. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I also feel like there was an interesting concept, like, oh, we are exploring this idea of like gender presentation in like a male presenting person playing as a female, and what could that mean, what can be explored through that, but it all is so surface level, and it doesn't really go the extra mile to make it interesting. Like it does the bare minimum with that whole concept, and the concept in itself is actually really cool, but it's just like,
yeah, it hit a lot of narrative beats and tropes that I really didn't like, and I got to the point where I'm like, I'm not going to read volume 2. I don't want to read volume 2. Like, I already know this is going to be something that I rank relatively low, because the story as it's being told so far isn't working for me.
Yeah, honestly, I was a little bit disappointed. Like, well, honestly, if I'm being completely honest, like this category is dominated by not even Western comics, American and Canadian, like North American like works every single year. Even though there is a lot of material being published into English, like European and Franco-Belgian comics are huge. They never get nominated. Manga is huge. Like it's like basically this, like if you figure like sales numbers and stuff, manga is doing bigger numbers right now in general per like print numbers compared to like American comics, and still they just don't have that same traction. I wonder if people don't even know that they can nominate them.
I think that may be the problem. I think this is a category that might be kind of trapped by its own history, in a way that it's not actually been around for that long, has it?
No, but I see in the chat, Adri is making a really great point. How we have a whole best series for novels, because long series and novel categories are at a disadvantage, but then the graphic novel category is basically the same every year. So yeah. Looking at the nominees, Monstrous, Die, and Once and Future were all nominees for the previous volumes, and we do have like some new.
Monstrous has even won.
Yeah, and like we do have some new books with Far Sector and Lore Olympus and Strange Adventures, but it's very much, and this is kind of one of my critiques of the Hugo in general, it's kind of momentum in terms of, or like, these people, so you're just going to keep nominating. Like, that's why Uncanny kept winning every year for best semi-prosing, and why they should have recused themselves for at least a year. Or like when people for fan cast, like when Squeakcast won 3 years in a row, it was like that same momentum, or like that same kind of people just going with what they had the name recognition for.
I will say that out of all of these, my pick is for Far Sector by N.K. Jamison and Jamal Campbell. It's partly through to name recognition, because N.K. Jamison is like a huge name in the like Hugo sphere, but also because I think that in terms of just art direction and like story beats, it is probably like one of the strongest contenders in this category, and it's also like standalone.
can I read it without any pre-existing
Yes,
DC Comics?
you can read it without having any previous knowledge of the
That's
DC
what I needed to
universe
know.
or the Green Lantern Corps, and that's also what makes it really good, because it's a very good entry point. It's a good entry point to the whole lore, and it's a good entry point to this specific character. And it's also like just shows that N.K. Jemisin as a writer understands both the constraints and the strengths of comic book screenwriting, like comic book writing, because like she took the material and was just like, okay, like it was really good. Like it's been one of the better things that I've read
Then I will.
in comics book wise.
I will
And
read
the art
Far
is just
Sector, and I think I will read Far Sector and Lore Olympus, and then I'm not going to read any of the others. Like,
I'm gonna catch up on Monstrous just because I do like it and I love the art, but I think at this point I'm skipping the Kieran Gillen ones, or at least I'm skipping Die, because I just bounced off the first collection so hard, and it's not worth it for me to spend what limited time I have to try and read stuff before voting closes to just struggle through that series.
I will say that it will be interesting to see the long list for this category. And I will be very mad if some of the other things that are nominated are on the long list and they lost to Kieran friggin' Gillen. Like
I did nominate Witch Hat Atelier.
I nominated Tea Dragon Festival, even though I knew it would never make the list.
I also nominated it.
Yeah.
I nominated a lot of cute, wholesome, cool stuff. That's like, okay. Well, Witch Hat Atelier will also be eligible for graphic work in the next awards, because this year there's gonna be at least one volume that will be released. So
I still have that out from the library, and I still haven't read it.
It's one
I will
of
read
those things.
My prediction on this category, I've only read one of the nominees. I've read Monstrous Volume 6 earlier today. I'm going to guess it's going to come down between Far Sector and Monstrous. That's kind of just my gut feeling on the category. The only one of these that I'm not going to try again is Die, because I have actually read the first volume and I didn't care that much. So.
What are our feelings about Lore Olympus? Because I have seen like all sorts of takes on that all over the spectrum that's made me almost nervous to read it, but I will read it because I was enough of like a middle grade Greek mythology nut that of course I will read it.
Lore Olympus.
I've read some of it and I liked it, but I was honestly surprised to see it on the ballot because, and this goes back to the conversation we were having earlier about romance in the Hugos. It's a very romance heavy series. Like it's like there are other characters involved and you get bits with them, but it's very focused on the relationship between Hades and Persephone. And it's very much not the norm for what would get nominated for the Hugos.
Well, I will say that
favor though, because I imagine people that don't normally read a lot of graphic novels and necessarily nominate and vote in this category reading and enjoying this one and nominating this one. So I almost wonder if it kind of extended outside of its normal reach of the category and made its way that way.
I will also say that it will be interesting to see how it deals with the format change from being a webtoon, which is basically built around continuous vertical scroll, as opposed to like your traditional like graphic novel like format with horizontal page layouts and like smaller images in one page and like mixed with like bigger spreads. I have not actually read the physical formatted version yet. I have only read the webtoon version.
I flipped through a print copy in a bookstore the other day just to see, because I will read it in print. I'll probably get it from the library because I far prefer to read stuff in print or to read graphic novels in print. I was not impressed with the formatting. I probably will still read it in print, but it was a lot of empty space on the page.
Yeah, because it's formatted from a webtoon originally.
Yeah, and like I just, you can very much tell that it's from a webtoon when you flip through the print edition. That is my one thing, having
Honestly, I preferred reading the print though. Like I tried reading it on the computer and I personally got annoyed at the scrolling. I like having it all out in front of me on a book page, but
that's the thing,
I
me
think
too, because I don't like scrolling.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because like recently I've read a whole bunch of like different web comics, and some comics actually do the vertical scroll in a really like cool way that actually like integrates the scrolling effect to the like way the art is laid out. I don't actually think that Lore Olympus really plays with the original webtoon format that much. So in that case, I think that it probably is a lot easier for them to take it to like from the realm of the like webtoon application and put it in a physical format, because it doesn't really like integrate the app format into the art style that much, other than having a lot of blank space.
And I think that blank space also gave me this feeling, because it's kind of a thick book. I bought the book and I got to the end and I'm like, I read this thick book, but not that much happened. But it's because there's so much blank space,
Very good for our Goodreads page count.
Great for that.
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm feeling currently that the graphic story like category is becoming a little bit, like not even a little bit, a lot of it stagnated. And I wish that it will open up for like more. Like I'm also thinking like,
it isn't, at least it isn't packed with Brian K. Vaughan.
Yeah, that's true. Well, though Ramsey did say that Saga is probably gonna clock this category next year, and I'm like, please don't manifest that to the universe.
Yeah.
Well,
I know people love Saga. I'm in the minority of the people who dislike that series.
So what's interesting with this one is just how relatively few nominations you needed to get onto the shortlist. So they say 340 ballots for 239 nominees. Finalists range from 19 to 66.
That's pretty low.
Yeah, it's very low. And so
does this mean I need to convert 66 people to Witch Hat Atelier by next year's nomination period?
I'm saying that this is a category where, and this is something I think it was Renee who said it, where if you like choose a category and like really focus your energy on that category and are like very vocal about what you love and what you think like is worthy of being considered to be a nominee, like it might have a lot of impact. Yeah. Especially because like looking at it, like a lot, it's looking like a lot of like there were like 1 to 2 nominations for a lot of things, which is why like that 19 is the lowest end. Like it's relatively accessible if you can get like a number of people to nominate something.
Just watch me rearrange my entire channel content in order to recommend people books to nominate for the graphic category of the Hugo Awards.
In case someone is watching from Hugo Administration, we are not advocating slates. We are advocating being very vocal about works that you love. We are not
exactly. I'm not advocating slates. I'm advocating making people aware that these works exist in the first place.
Oh,
it's an Esme. The most regal of kittens.
Our queen has visited us.
It's like, I don't know what's going on. What is happening?
Your admirers are here.
I mean, Esme is literally the cat that I picture doing this while she strolls past.
Yeah. It's always hard to like get her on camera in a way where she doesn't look grumpy, because I do have to like hold her up to get her on the camera. She decided she was having enough of that.
Queen Esme the First.
Yeah. Plotting a revolution.
All right, we are coming up on 2 hours. Is everybody okay continuing?
Yes.
Yeah, we have a lot to get to.
We do. I'm about to suggest we're getting down ballot, so there are a couple categories I want to take take a poll here on whether we should skip some of these. We have best related work. I personally know nothing about these nominees and I have nothing to say about them.
I have like some comments about it, like how
There's a couple that
Okay, we'll
know
do
about.
that. We'll
I
do
have
that
a
one
couple
then.
of comments about the shortlist, but nothing too in depth.
Okay. Best editor categories: short form and long form.
I don't have
I have almost nothing to say about, because I don't pay attention to editors that much, and
Okay.
I don't actually think that I'm qualified to talk about editors.
I used to have opinions, but I haven't kept up in touch. So we're gonna skip the 2 editor categories. If people in the chat have opinions, you're welcome to share them, but we're not going to do an actual segment on them. Okay, let us tackle best related work quickly. The nominees are Being Seen, One Deafblind Woman's Fight to End Ableism by Elsa Sionison, The Complete Debacle, Saga of a Culture War by Kamestros Philapton, Dangerous Visions and New Worlds, Radical Science Fiction, 1950 to 1985, edited by Andrew Nett and Ian McIntyre, How Twitter Can Ruin a Life by Emily St. James, Never Say You Can't Survive by Charlie Jane Anders, and True Believer, The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee by Abraham Reisman.
Okay, so my main comment with this is this shortlist feels like a backlash to last year's. And by that, I mean last year there was a lot of commentary about the fact that both Fiacon and Fringe were on the ballot, and everyone was like, and there were a lot of like Hugo Oldgard clutching their pearls and being like, but this is not nonfiction. This is not commentary. What is this on our ballot? This shouldn't be here. And so it feels to me like this is very much a reaction against that. Like looking through that, it's a lot of nonfiction. It's a lot of seeing like more commentary. So like
essays.
Yeah, so like Charlie Jane Anders, like she's a mainstay in like the Hugo community. So like that, I honestly, that wasn't a surprise, but there were like some things on here I'm just like, really, that's what you're considering for best related? I don't know. It feels very much like people who were clutching their pearls about last year's shortlist are reacting to that.
I don't follow this category that strongly. Like if I do nominate in it or I do vote in it, it's usually 1 or 2 things. I feel like it might kind of come in waves. I feel like there's a year or 2 where we get things like last year, more, let's call them oddball, different format type things get nominated and people are like, why? And then you get the speeches that get nominated and then it kind of settles back down into the books and the essays, and then something happens and we go back to the oddball things. And I feel like a lot of people use this as commentary on the community on
I mean, I am actually surprised that not a lot of like video essays made it this year.
I will say, like, I did nominate,
because there were a lot of good ones that I also nominated.
I did nominate A Brief History of Homestuck from Sarah Zed, because I truly had no interest in Homestuck, and yet she got me to watch a 2-hour video on it.
I mean, I nominated the like Sex in Star Trek by Jesse Gender. It was like 2-hour long video, like talking about like the sexual politics of Gene Roddenberry, and it was actually pretty darn amazing video.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
Like 1950 to 1985.
Yeah, I also nominated Book Roast Magical Readathon because I think the amount of work that he puts into that like deserves recognition. Like, she took something that had a really strong affiliation with Harry Potter and completely gutted and redid it so that it's its own thing. It has its own mythology, and so that people who might not have felt safe participating in its previous version could still participate. So I have so much respect for the amount of work that she put in, and so I had nominated it for that. I also nominated Queer Readings of Lord of the Rings Are Not Accidents by Molly Ostertag, just because I thought that was a really well done piece.
I never heard of that. I'm gonna have to look
it's on Polygon. So it's her talking about, like I said, queer readings of Lord of the Rings. I really enjoyed it.
I gotta Google that really quickly so I won't forget.
I will say that like, yeah, Thomas, exactly. It is talking about all the horrible and problematic stuff, and it's actually a really interesting and good video. I highly recommend if you are at all interested in that kind of thing and Star Trek and stuff. Like, anyway, Jessie Gender is also like a super cool YouTuber. Anyway, like her stuff is peak. She put so much work into like examining different stuff. But I will say that out of these nominees, like I'm kind of surprised and not surprised at the same time that How Twitter Can Ruin a Life by Emily St. James made the
Was this about Isabel Fall?
That's
Yeah.
Isabel Fall one.
Okay. I think I've read bits and pieces of that then.
That
I'm
one,
completely unsurprised that it's here.
I wasn't surprised that it was there because it sparked a lot of discussion within the community, and I think there is a history of nominating shorter nonfiction pieces based on that. Like last year, George R. R. Martin can Off Into the Sun got nominated, which again, pearl clutching, which again I kind of think is part of it. Anyway.
That one was a good read.
I like that one. I
read it multiple times.
I mean, vindicated reading it because I'm just
I know.
Exactly.
Really
I feel like if you had to suffer through that whole award show, it was like a little bit of like cathartic therapy, like reading through that piece, and that is probably why people nominated it.
It was like, oh God, I wasn't the only one to feel that way. I mean, you guys
Exactly.
remember, I got through that ceremony by getting drunk on wine.
I mean, same. I downed half a bottle of Hendrick's gin.
I drank at least 2 very strong cocktails.
I mean, it was through like liquid courage and the support of friends. If I was watching it by myself, I probably would have cried myself to sleep at some point.
Right. We all just muted it and talked with each other while he was going on and on.
Like,
I unmuted it every
that was
10 minutes and
very
went, oh God, he's still talking.
It's still going. Jeez.
I was in multiple group chats and we all were incredibly salty about it.
Oh God. I mean, the whole thing is bad, but I kind of look back on the behind the scenes things happening. Then it's like, okay, that was a good group moment.
So
Yeah.
that's basically all the commentary I have for best related work. And if anyone has anything else.
Kristen, I think you did like whole videos about like the related work category, like, and you had some really interesting like suggestions of what could have been nominated. Do you actually see any of those on your list?
Not a single one. I mean, I'm not super surprised because it's such a far-flung category. Like, literally, so many things are eligible to be on it. So my 5 things being on there is kind of a long shot. But yeah, I had nominated a couple of video essays. I nominated the Lindsay Ellis Mask Off video where she talks about Twitter, mob mentality and stuff, and cancel culture. I nominated The Day Rue Became Black, where they talk about Rue in the Hunger Games, how a lot of fans, there was backlash to her being cast as a little black girl, even though she's described as black in the books. And then I nominated a Goodreads group that is compiling a list of science fiction without sexual violence that was inspired by the Taylor Gailey essay a couple years ago. And I also nominated LeVar Burton Reads, which is a podcast where he just reads short stories that I just personally adore. And I think it's not eligible for fan cast because it's not actually commentary. He's just reading stories. So
I feel like that would have been a great one for best related work.
That could be another one that we lobby for next year.
Yeah, let's do it. That would make me so happy. That man deserves a Hugo.
All right. Do we want to move on to best dramatic presentation?
Yes. Okay, long form.
Yeah.
Okay. The nominees here are Dune, Encanto, The Green Knight, Shangchi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Space Sweepers, and WandaVision. And I need to go take care of my dog really quickly, so I'm going to excuse myself. Y'all talk. Take it away.
I'm saying this as a person who deeply loved Encanto. if we only got one animated movie, I kind of wish it was The Mitchells versus the Machines.
If we only got one
I didn't
animated
see it
movie,
soon
I
enough
wanted it to be
nominate it.
Belle.
I only watched it last week, but it
I
was so much
love
fun.
Mitchells versus the Machines. Like,
I haven't even heard of that.
it's on Netflix, so it's an animated. It's from the same it's produced by the same folks who did Into the Spider-Verse, so it has like the animation on it is so cool. Like, they do a lot of really great stuff, and like the main female character is openly queer, and she gets a girlfriend at the end. And it's a lot about families and stuff. So like I said, I'm saying this as someone who loved Encanto. I would have preferred Mitchell versus the Machines because I think that is a better
Oh,
movie.
I need to watch it. I have actually not heard of that before.
I would have liked to see both of them on here, but I didn't watch Mitchells and Machines soon enough to nominate it. However, I think between the two, I slightly prefer Encanto just because I'm soft for musicals.
Yeah.
Same.
But like, I would not be unhappy with like the dramatic presentation categories being dominated by animation, and they never are. Like, most of what I nominate is usually animated.
But Kelsey, also speaking of musicals, Belle, directed by Mamoru
I know,
Hosoda,
I also nominated
would have been great.
It was also snubbed for the Oscars, which made me mad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a is it a perfect movie? Is it like the third time that Mamoru Hosoda is doing a movie on VR worlds and stuff?
No, I had actually a lot of
such a good exploration of grief
on that movie. Like, I don't think it was perfect. I think, but I loved it still.
Yeah. Also, it has great film intertextuality. Like, there are scenes that are animated frame for frame from Beauty and the Beast by Disney, and it's completely intentional, an intentional homage to that whole movie and that story.
I think it wasn't quite as good a fairy tale retelling as I was hoping it would be, and also I don't think the ending handled the subject of child abuse
here's
well
the thing though. The ending kind of cops out at the end because it once again goes to that idea of conformity, which is a kind of a big deal in a lot of like Japanese media. It's this idea of conforming to the pre-established mainstream social hierarchy, and yeah.
We are talking a lot about a movie that isn't nominated, though. But
I know, I'm sorry. I'm just saying.
The music in that movie was so good. The animation was so good. The other thing about it is that I wanted it to be longer. Like, I needed it to be a whole animated series because there was so much that I would have taken more of.
That said, I love that Encanto is on the ballot, though.
Yeah, I do. And I see that Thomas had put in that at least this ballot isn't all superhero movies. And yeah, I was actually a little surprised that Shang-Chi was on the ballot and not Spider-Man No Way Home.
I'm actually more surprised that, I'm surprised that Green Knight is on the ballot. Like, I'm happy about it, I'm surprised.
I'm not surprised. There were a lot of people who were salty about the fact that it wasn't on the Oscars ballot.
Also, I love that Space Sweepers made it. As a person who nominated Space Sweepers, I'm so glad that it made the shortlist.
That was the one I was pleasantly surprised to see because I haven't seen it, but I've heard about it. And so I was like, oh, they actually nominated a non-Western science fiction movie for for long form.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly a little bit surprised about WandaVision being on this, like the whole first season being in the long form category, where normally we've seen like episodes of a season being.
I'm not, but that's just because I do think there are some very good individual episodes. I think they were so it was so focused on the narrative that they were telling. It made sense that it would be all of them. I also think it's possible that people were nominating different episodes of WandaVision, and so it was that's why it's not on the short form.
That's the thing. I didn't nominate it, but I was thinking about whether I was going to in either long form or short form, and I was thinking that I did not remember if there was a standout episode for me in that show. Like, it was very episodic, but I remember it as a whole more than I remember any of the individual episodes.
I will
Yeah,
say
I'm
that
also not surprised.
Ramsey is saying that Demon Slayer movie made crazy money in the US and Europe. Yes, it did, but then again, I don't think there's a lot of like Venn diagrammic overlap between Demon Slayer watchers and Hugo nominators.
I do like Adri's suggestion about trying to get a video game on, because if we don't have an individual game, if we don't have a games category, it makes sense. So she had mentioned Disco Elysium would have been good. I do, like, not gonna lie, if we don't have a games category for next year, I might just nominate Horizon Forbidden West for.
Is that allowed? Is it allowed within the rules?
Hey, no one is telling me I can't, so I will. They aren't going to give us a games category. We're going to use what we have.
Does anyone have anything? Well, Dune was kind of a shoe-in for this long form.
I'm honestly not going to watch Dune because I'm still mad about Blade Runner 2049 and the money I spent buying a ticket on that, and how it was a terrible empty, like, it was beautiful, but it was vacuous. And
I actually liked Dune.
I
was really surprised. I was not expecting to like it. I went to see it kind of dreading it, and then walked out of the theater. Was like, wow, that was actually a couple of hours well spent. What the hell? Oh no,
I think it was a good adaptation of the first half of the story. It was visually wonderful to look at, and I'm not gonna lie, I've listened to the score on repeat since watching the movie. So,
and it also gave us the best frame in cinematic history by giving us a naked Oscar Isaac.
That is true.
I mean,
it was kind of slow at points, in my opinion.
I know, but that's Dune.
Yeah.
I will say the other thing, like the other reason I'm like not super enthused is I don't understand Timothée Chalamet. Like, I don't get the appeal at all.
I like his hair.
He's very like have you ever heard about how the Bichon and pretty boy culture in Japan got born? With basically this one Swedish guy being presented in like magazines. Timothée Chalamet is basically this modern era's rendition of that guy, and that's why he's probably so popular in Asia, especially because he fits into that.
Like, he has high cheekbones, and that's it.
Well,
and good
some
hair.
people exactly, Ramsey, you're right. Timothy is a shoujo hero. It is true that he is. You need to. He just needs eyelash extensions, and his transformation to a live action Josei shoujo hero is complete, and some liquid tears.
Yeah. Was anyone else kind of expecting to see Foundation or Wheel of Time?
I was not surprised that, well, Wheel of Time got nominated in short form, not long form, and I think that might be because Wheel of Time, like, the first season, because of COVID impacting the filming, the last 2 episodes felt a little disjointed compared to the rest of it.
I'm actually surprised that Foundation didn't make it in any of the categories, either of the dramatic presentation categories. I am actually like we'll talk about it when we go to short form. I have thoughts.
I was gonna have a comment about it being on Apple Plus, but then For All Mankind is on there, and that is Apple Plus, so
yeah.
Or Apple TV Plus, or whatever the hell they're
called. I mean, maybe other people felt similar to me, that like Foundation was good and had a high production value, but didn't really astound me in any amazing way. It was just fine.
Also, once again, Ramsey is speaking the truth. Lee Pace is, in fact,
Wait, Lee Pace
A
is in
snack.
Foundation?
Yes.
I just found my reason to try it.
Yeah,
Okay.
if you want to watch it together, Rachel, let's do it, because
I
I've
gotta get
also only
access
just
to
watched
it.
snippets of
Do
it.
I really want to pay for Apple TV to watch this?
Or the great internet. Never mind.
I'm sure between all of us we can find a workaround or a password to share.
Yeah. Or let's
Yeah.
put it this way. I just want to watch the episode with Lee Pace in it. Do I have to watch the
No,
entire
he's the main
He's-
character.
Oh, really? Wow,
I
I'm
will clutch
living under
my.
a rock.
Yes, please.
I
Yes,
think
please.
he's the main character based on marketing, but marketing lies. So
Damn.
Marketing better
Okay.
not lie about Lee Pace.
Yay.
He's good looking, but I hated
I've
Like, I-
really liked Lee Pace since the Pushing Daisies.
Exactly. Pushing Daisies is
yeah.
one of my favorite shows of all time. I have watched it over and over.
Daisies is such. I actually have the DVDs, so maybe I'll rewatch it soon.
I have the DVDs as well. Well, one of the DVDs actually has a big scratch from being overwatched. So I don't know if it works anymore, but you know.
All right, let's go to the short form.
Wait,
I
we-
have
there are a
goats.
couple of
I
these
have
that we haven't
goats.
talked about yet at all. Has
What?
anyone other than me seen The Green Knight? I didn't particularly like it.
It was interesting. I mostly was in it for the costumes in the end.
It
And
was
Dev Patel
interesting,
looks
but-
nice.
But if I hadn't seen it in theaters, I think I would have DNF'd it. Like, I only watched the whole thing because I was sitting in a seat in a theater. It was so long. It felt long. Was it long?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I went to watch it, and I basically like I have this I call it the snack meter, where you go to the theaters or like to watch a thing, and you have a lot of snacks. If you still have snacks by the end of the movie, it was a good movie because you weren't paying attention to your snacks, you were paying attention to the movie. If
I
you
wasn't
have
eating snacks
run out
because
of
it was
your
COVID
snacks,
and I
it's a
wore a
bad
mask
movie.
the whole time.
Smart.
So I don't know if I would have had snacks, but it felt like a movie that should have been for me because I tend to be very interested in like sort of weird highbrow retellings of stuff. Except I'm not actually that interested in Arthurian legend. So
I was
maybe...
very excited about it based on all of the trailers and Dev Patel, but it's just something in like there were things I liked, like the costuming, which was so out there that it was like wonderful. Like it's so textured and everything. Like I just like lived for the costuming. The sound design, great. I can't tell you anything about the story. If I had to describe to you what the movie is about, I'm like, it's about a knight, I guess.
They gave it two different endings, neither of which is the ending from the original story, which I think was sort of the only point. But regardless, that's the one on this list that I am genuinely very surprised to see on here because I did not think enough people would have loved that to nominate it.
I feel like it has a very strong visual presence though, and that might actually sometimes work for people in a way that it kind of supersedes the story, kind of. Like I can see it being nominated just for the sheer visual strength of it.
I don't even remember the visuals.
It's very
maybe I'm not
gray.
Maybe I'm not a. I don't know. I feel like I'm a visual person like that because I love pretty animation so much, but it didn't.
Here's the thing. Oh, actually, okay. My red string just like completely vanished. What even is ideas and voicing them?
Anyways, that's the one I'm surprised to see here, and now I think we can move on.
I'm just gonna say Shangchi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, like,
I haven't watched it yet. I will.
That one, I think visually, like there are parts of it visually that work really well, and I think parts of the story work well. But then you get the typical Marvel third act big
What?
brawl, and it kind of detracts from the story.
I will
I
never
will-
be
I will
shocked
say-
and surprised to see a Marvel movie on this shortlist, you know?
I will say that Shiran J. Zhao's video on Shangchi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is one of the most entertaining things to watch,
Oh, I haven't seen that.
because they go over like all the things that Tony Leung's character could have prevented from happening in Asia.
Yeah.
And there's like multiple times where they go like, how could you? It's great. I recommend that video.
That was on like, I do think that Shiran J. Zhao should have been on Best Fan Cast for their commentary videos, but that's a story for Best Fan Cast.
Yeah. Do we want to go to the dramatic presentation short form?
Yeah, let's move on to short form. So the nominees.
Oh, actually, one last thing. Star Wars Visions. Yes, Ramsey. I agree. That should have been on there. I really enjoyed that, and I'm actually very sad that none of it got nominated. Sorry, I just saw the comment.
All right, short form nominees are The Wheel of Time, The Flame of Tar Valon, For All Mankind, The Grey, Arcane, The Monster You Created, The Expanse, Nemesis Games, Loki, The Nexus Event, and Star Trek Lower Decks Wedge Dudge.
I haven't watched any of these yet. Two of the series I started watching Wheel of Time, but then my year-long gift Amazon Prime subscription ended, and I didn't pay to renew it. And I have started Arcane, but I haven't gotten to that episode yet. But like, I haven't watched any of these.
That is their season. Like in Arcane, The Monster You Created is the season finale. I nominated episode 3, episode 6, and episode 9 of Arcane for this category. Basically, the like all the arc closures, because it is basically like written as 3 episode arcs. So
one I've seen is The Flames of Tarvalon, or The Flame of Tarvalon, and that one, like, I don't know if or actually no, I also saw Loki. That one I wouldn't necessarily I would have put on the ballot, but also it's the one where they made the gay subtext overt text, so I do appreciate that.
And all the fanboys in the internet rioted because of that. The discourse.
They could just
my brain just like explodes at the sheer tiredness.
Yeah.
So
I think there are a couple of animated episodes on the list. So you have Arcane, and then you also have Star Trek Lower Decks, which is a very different type of animation.
Where do you have to be subscribed to watch Star Trek Lower Decks?
Paramount Plus.
Oh.
Never heard of it.
I will say that
Also, Star Trek Lower Decks is kind of like that sort of Family Guy American Dad animation style that I tend to be extremely allergic to. But I do know that in terms of plotting, it is very different. But it is kind of like that whole animated sitcom type of genre.
It's a very humorous, loving, like, poking fun at Star Trek, but also like with a lot of love towards it. So it's like kind of how like you make fun of something that you love.
Yeah.
Or you find humor in something that you love.
It has also been very polarizing, because then there are people who I'm not going. Once again, the discourse is making me tired. But like, it's been a series that has kind of like split the fan base a bit in terms of like.
Well, there wasn't the video that you were talking about for best related work with the sexual politics of Star Trek.
Yeah.
Wasn't that inspired by one of these episodes?
Yeah, exactly. It was inspired by a specific episode in Star Trek Lower Decks, and the backlash to that episode specifically.
Which I honestly loved that little part of that little episode. It was amazing.
Wasn't even the first time Star Trek has gone very sexy at like just like the whole existence of Riker is like enough to like tell you that
Okay, so what?
Anyways,
So what's interesting is actually I won't say this. This is a tangent, but what's interesting on the ballot is that all the episodes are from streaming services, and so
that is true.
So it does kind of create a bit. I think one, it's a commentary on like where speculative, like where is speculative TV being made.
But is For All Mankind also a stream from a streaming service?
Yeah, it's on Apple. It's
Apple.
the alternate history space race where the Russians got to the moon first.
Oh,
I had never heard of it until it
Never
showed up
heard
on
of
this
it.
ballot.
So I have some friends who really like it. I haven't seen it. It's from Ron D. Moore. I think Ron D. Moore is one of the producers.
oh,
But yeah, I do find it interesting that it's all subscription based. So I guess it's just like where is speculative fiction being produced, and
And where are people watching it?
yeah.
yeah.
I wonder,
I also
think how much of people's viewing habits changed during the plague years and everything.
Exactly. I'm thinking that the reason why we even if you think about, like, for example, the best dramatic presentation long form, both Dune and Encanto almost immediately went to streaming services. Well, like they had very limited like releases in cinema.
I saw Encanto in theaters before it was.
And then Space Sweepers and WandaVision streaming services. Like only Green Knight like seems to be one that actually got like Shangchi also was almost immediately on Disney Plus. So I think that's like a trend that is happening, that streaming services are like getting more traction now.
Yeah.
I will say I'm very glad Arcane made it to the shortlist. I am very glad about it. Now I can force all of my friends to watch the entire season because it is great. Exactly. I mean, we watched it together with Joe and Rachel these past 3 weeks. Watched Arcane's episode,
which is why I've actually seen 2 things in this category rather than just one.
But in terms of like animation, it's pure like eye candy. Like
it is. It's really,
like it's like really gorgeously animated. Sound design, soundtrack, like voice acting. Like it's like that. I'm probably gonna watch it a 3rd time before we get to the like actual voting period because I just love it so much. And I'm saying this as a person who absolutely detests League of Legends as a game. Like it is a cesspool of despair, but you don't have to know anything about League of Legends to be able to enjoy Arcane, actually.
Yeah. Do we want to move on? Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's interesting that the only Star Trek was Lower Decks. Like, weren't there several other series eligible?
Yeah, so Prodigy would have been eligible. That's our kid.
Did Picard second season come last year, or is it coming now?
Season is airing right now.
Okay. What is time?
I think Discovery, the first part of the season, might have started last year. I'm preemptively calling it now. There will be Star Wars on the ballot next year because not only do we have Book of Boba Fett for all its sins, we're also
Obi-Wan.
we're getting Kenobi.
So I'm watching Picard right now, and I'm loving it. I'm like probably going to nominate it on the ballot for next year. Like, I like this season better than the previous seasons.
I mean, Star Trek stuff. I haven't noticed any of it.
I am calling it right now, even though my heart of hearts wants Arcane to win, but the realist in me knows that it's either gonna be the Wheel of Time or the Expanse.
I mean,
yeah. Also, I thought the Expanse was done last year, but we're still. Is this gonna be the last chance Expanse has to be on the ballot?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's done now, right?
That's
Okay.
also why I think it's going to be the Expanse.
Yeah.
It's not. It's the season finale as well as the series finale. So yeah.
Okay.
General observation. I just sort of thought of this is that what has dropped out of the dramatic presentation categories over the past couple of years? Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It used to be packed with like multiple episodes of Doctor Who and oh my god, commentary on Doctor Who, even fan cast was
But I
like
also
Doctor
that
Who fan cast.
I think that part of this is like there's some really like interesting behind the scenes flack going on with Doctor Who right now in terms of like the showrunners and like BBC. There's some drama going on there, and also from what I understand, this current iteration of Doctor Who hasn't been as well received by fans or by critics for that matter as the previous era of what Paul. Oh my God, who is that? The Italian sounding name that came after. Yeah, that came after Matt Smith, which is surprising to me.
Peter Capaldi.
Peter Capaldi, yes, thank you.
So I thought you were talking about showrunners. Yeah, so I think it'll be interesting because, like Ramsey noted, Russell T Davies is coming back. So, like, what's going on there? Yeah, I will say there's probably going to be at least one thing going on. There's at least going to be one Star Wars related thing on the ballot next year.
I'm sure.
Sadly, no chance of Arcane for next year because the second season is most likely going to come out in 2023 if we're lucky.
Oh, and did anybody else love Infinity Train? I was not expecting to see it, but still sad that it didn't make it.
I haven't watched it.
Oh, it's so good. It's so amazing. I feel like you guys would love it.
What is it?
It's an animated show. It was on HBO, which I feel like anything on HBO we do very well.
Well, Rachel, we were talking about getting HBO Max for other things, so now we can just jot down different shows to watch.
Yeah, it's really good. It's about this train that's kind of like in another dimension, and every season focuses on a different character who like gets sucked into this dimension with this infinity train, and they have to like figure out how to get off the train, and each car is like a completely different world. It's like you go in the car and it's like the TARDIS is bigger on the inside. I don't know. It's
okay,
just very
I kind of want to see it, especially if it's animated.
Yeah, it's animated. It's philosophical. It's deep, and I loved the last season that it was eligible this year. So that was like the one that I nominated in this category.
I have a suggestion for the next categories because I have to probably jump off soon because time zone stuff. But I want to hear Di's rant about the Lodestar.
Okay, so can we fast forward to Lodestar and then
and then we'll back up?
Yeah.
All right, Lodestar. Let's talk. We'll mention the nominees.
Read the nominees first.
Okay, so the nominees for the Lodestar Award, which is not a Hugo Award, but it is presented at the Hugo Award ceremony. Chaos on Catnet by Naomi Kritzer, Iron Widow by Sharon J. Zhao, The Last Graduate by Naomi Novik, Redemptor by Jordan Ifweko, A Snake Falls to Earth by Darcy Little Badger, and Victory is Greater Than Death by Charlie Jane Anders.
The Last Graduate should not be on this list once again. And I said this on Twitter, and I know Kelsey saw it, and I know Rhea saw it. I have lost a lot of respect for Naomi Novik for her, one, not declining, if not for last year, then for this year. And then two, not saying, hey, please don't nominate The Last Graduate for the Lodestar because it's not a YA book. And she hasn't done either. And she's once again taking up a spot that belongs to a actual YA book, and she's pretty much only getting it because of her name recognition. And if she wanted to be on the Lodestar ballot, then she should, shocker, write a YA book. If your book is published by an adult imprint and can
marketed as an adult book.
Rhea, please let me finish.
Sorry.
And can either be an Alex Award winner or on the long list, which for those who don't know, the Alex Award is an award given by the American Library Associations for an adult book that has crossover appeal, which she knows about because her books have been on the long list and have won Alex Awards in the past. Then your book should not be eligible for the Lodestar. And I'm so annoyed that this keeps happening because I think it undermines the goal of the Lodestar, which is to recognize excellence for young adult literature, which this is not. And then you also have the fact that you have you have so many BIPOC authors who do write adult who have to say, hey, my book is not young adult, thinking back to R.F. Huang and her whole thing, The Poppy War is not young adult. And the fact that you have this white Jewish one, like taking up that space and doing that, like, it's just so infuriating. And I hate it so much. And I don't know how there's a way to fix it from like a back end perspective, like maybe there should be language that says if your book is published by an adult imprint or is eligible for an Alex Award, then it shouldn't be on the Lodestar. I don't know, but it's so infuriating that Novik is taking up this spot, especially because last year, looking at the long list, she was the last person on that list. The person she beat out was Sarah Gailey, whose work doesn't always work for me, but she actually did publish a YA book that year, and like she should have been on the short list, not Naomi Novik.
Yeah, I also have many very strong feelings about this, and I feel like I would be more eloquent, except that we've been going long enough now that my brain is slightly starting to melt and turn into mush. But I ranted about this a little bit in my little TikToks that I did yesterday, and I feel like there are people who are genuinely confused about what is and isn't a YA book and how you can tell. And the fact that these books are showing up on the Lodestar list indicates to me that people in the nominating pool for the Hugo Awards are confused. And the fact that there isn't a clarification being made here is not helping. It is making people more confused. Someone in the comments on my TikTok, who I really don't want to be like mad at or blast because they were very polite about it, but sort of said to me, but if you read it, you will see that it is a YA book. And the thing is, there is no literary quality of a book that defines it being a YA book. You can read a book and think, oh, this could have or should have been published as YA, based on your understanding of the YA books you've been reading, of what the markers and tropes and literary qualities of a book are that you associate with YA because it matches the other YA books you've read, for example. But that isn't actually what makes a book YA. The thing that makes a book YA is that it's a marketing and publishing category. That's what it is. And trends change over time. The things that get published as YA as opposed to adult change over time. None of this is set in stone. None of this is objective. And so the fact that the one thing that we have to actually designate what is a YA book, which is published as a YA book by a YA imprint, marketed as a YA book, is being disregarded in this case.
I would also say that what irks me is the fact that, like, A Deadly Education and also The Last Graduate were pretty aggressively marketed as adult books. In all of their like promotional materials and everything, they were always like, well, like magical schools, but how about like magical schools for adults and stuff like that, like magical universities and things like that. It was very clearly and very aggressively marketed towards adults in all of its promotional material, in all the interviews Novik herself made. So that is also why it is pretty irksome to see it on this short list, because it just rings so false given all of the evidence that we have of this book not ever being targeted towards a YA audience. I
told this anecdote last year when we did this show, and I don't know if I should keep harping on it, because I don't want to assume what Naomi Novik's personal feelings or intentions are towards accepting this award, but I just keep coming back to it because I went to her reading at Dublin Worldcon. That was before A Deadly Education was published, before we even really knew very much about that book, and she read from it and talked a little bit about her publisher's decision to buy it and sell it as an adult book. And she did say that when she was writing it, she thought she was writing a YA novel, and I don't want to assume too much based on that about how she feels about her series now or anything. But she did say she thought she was writing a YA novel, and that because Del Rey was her publisher for previous books. They got first dibs on anything she wrote. She gave it to them. She said, I think this is a YA novel. And they came back at her and said, no, this is an adult novel. Here's why. Here's why we want to market it to an adult audience. So like, regardless of what she thinks about the series, she's fully aware of the reasons that her publisher has chosen to buy this book and publish it as an adult novel. And by the time she's writing the sequel, she knows she's writing the sequel for this publisher that has reasons for wanting to market it to an adult audience, not a YA audience.
Mm-hmm.
And
that is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't you make the argument that it's a little bit of both? Like, it has YA elements.
It's not, like, if you look at class, like, you could say that for the Wayward Children books. It has YA elements. It stars young adults. It's at a boarding school. It's portal fantasy, which typically is for younger audiences. However, it, like, Sean Mcguire has basically said, like, this is not YA. Like, it has appeal for YA readers. Like, I can, like, but it's not YA. And you have other authors saying the same, again, like the Poppy War, bringing that up because it has similar tropes. It's young adult protagonists. It's set in a boarding school, those types of things. It is aggressively not YA. So I think, like, you get the whole thing with crossover appeal, where there are adult books that do have elements that are similar or appeal to young adult readers, and that's why the Alex Awards is a really valuable tool for librarians, because it tells you, like, if you're going to be doing these, like, types of displays, like, these are books that you might want to buy for your adult collection and find ways to market to young adult readers somehow. But it's an adult book. Like, if you look at where it's shelved in the library, if you look at where it's shelved in bookstores, it is an adult book, and it should not be on the Lodestar.
Was Seanan Mcguire's supposedly middle grade book that was
it hasn't been nominated.
Was it not? Okay, I didn't remember if it was. I just remembered that she did.
It's also adult.
Which one?
Middle Game.
No, not Middle Game.
No.
Not
The
Middle Game?
one that's a spin-off from Middle Game. That's
It's Across the Woodward Wall.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that like more for a younger audience? But I'm completely blanking whether or not
didn't read it, but it's one of those, like, border cases that makes me question how we define young adult or middle grade, because I think Tor.com did say they were trying to market it as middle grade, even though they are mostly an adult publisher.
Yeah, and
so I don't know how we define these things if a publisher chooses to go outside their
I
comfort
feel like
zone.
that one is also, like, a really tricky case, because, like, I personally wouldn't nominate it for a Lodestar because of, like, the publishing stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, and I also think, just like Thomas said, that there's a lot of YA SFF, and I think I would prefer to nominate that, just because, like, there's so much great YA books being published, and, like, there's not enough room to nominate
YA books that I would have loved to see on this list. Winterkeep, that aren't there.
I'm actually a little bit surprised that Winterkeep did not make it.
Yeah, I was too. Like, I think Winterkeep. I will be incandescent, and you will probably, like, at the Hugos, like, once they release the long list, if The Last Graduate kept out Winterkeep,
I would be mad. That's when I would be mad.
I will be a fountain of rage.
Yeah, we will all gather together and become a fountain of rage. Yeah.
We'll go out and, like, get takeout and just, like, be ranting to each other.
Okay, so we've talked about this for quite a bit. Any other commentary on the nominees in this category?
I'm very glad that Darcy Little Badger's
I am
book
too.
made it.
I'm extremely happy that A Snake Falls to Earth. I'm happy that actually, like, honestly, aside from The Last Graduate, I don't have any complaints about this category. Like, I do think that Charlie Jane Anders is on the list because she's Charlie Jane Anders, and
I've never even heard of this book.
I read it not that long ago. I read, like, the first half of it before nominations closed, I decided that I would finish it, but it wasn't going to be good enough for me to nominate it. So then I set it aside and finished it after nominations closed. It was 3 stars for me. I didn't like it as much as her adult novels. But I think it's going to be a matter of taste. She's one of those authors where everything she writes is really, really different. And this one, the style of it didn't work for me in book form in a way that like I was having a hard time putting my finger on. It seems to me like it's trying to sort of pay homage to like an animated YA sci-fi show genre thing. And in theory, I should have liked that because I like watching that type of animated show, but it didn't work for me in this format. And I was struggling with that.
Yeah, I think I haven't heard a lot about this book, but I think part of the reason it's on the ballot is because it's Charlotte Jane Anders. I will say I'm really happy that, like I said, I'm very happy that Iron Widow is on the ballot. I've heard really great things about it, and this will probably get me to finally read it.
I definitely want to read Iron Widow, but because I have watched Shiran J. Zhao's YouTube channel for a long time, and I like them as a person, like their personality is great. So I not that I'm gonna vote for the book just because of their personality, but I'm just saying that their personality is making me want to read the book more.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than other than Winterkeep not being on the ballot, I'm mostly happy with it.
I mean, I have not read all of these, but it just seems from what I've heard about these books to be actually a pretty strong, solid category. Like it's a good list of nominees this year. So
yeah.
I liked Chaos on Catnet, but not as much as the first book.
I hope that the books are in the voter packet because I keep wanting to read them, but my libraries don't have them.
I started listening to Ray Bear on audio because it was nominated last year, and last year being like only a few months ago because the Hugos were pushed back. So like it was not that many months ago that I was listening to Ray Bear for the Hugo Awards, and the sequel is nominated here. I know people loved it, but I just stopped listening to it at some point, and then it went back to the library, and I didn't check it back out again. So I don't know if I'll give that another try to get to the sequel or not. I might not, but then the others, I'm really looking forward to reading A Snake Falls to Earth.
Me too. Yeah.
Same.
Very excited to read that one. And I've sort of gotten the impression that Iron Widow might not be for me, but I will at least try a few chapters and see if it's for me.
I've heard enough reviews that I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be my kind of thing. So I'll probably skip it. But I don't usually try to read all the nominees in this category anyway. I kind of pick and choose what sounds good to me. Yeah. All right. We are getting pretty far along here, and I think some of us are losing some energy. And
It is almost midnight over here, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna call it quits for now and feed the kitties and go to sleep. But I will catch the rest of the stream tomorrow after work. So
All
fun.
right.
See you.
Bye, Rhea.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, so in the interest of time and energy, how many other categories are we interested in discussing? Do we want to talk about the professional and fan art categories?
I don't have anything for that. I do want to talk a little bit about best fanzine, and I see that Joe has already pointed out something.
Okay.
I think what I want to talk about is the same thing Joe wanted to mention.
Okay, so do we want to talk about semi-prozine and fanzine?
And then eventually we have to talk about the Astounding, right? Because we haven't talked about that.
Yeah,
So
I don't.
Semi-prozine, fanzine, fancast, Astounding
No
Award. How
booktubers
about
and-
fan writer? Do we have opinions on fan writer?
I do have opinions.
Okay. Can we keep some things a bit short? Because I think we need to
No,
do
I will basically say, like my main. I don't have anything for semi-prosing, but honestly my best fan writer one is it is a very white ballot. I'm really happy that Alex Brown is on the shortlist. I think they do a lot of really great work and commentary. I would have preferred Stitch be on the ballot, and I have thoughts about one of the candidates, which are extremely negative given how much of their ass they showed in getting the Lodestar on the ballot, and how much of an ass they've been about the Games Award. And yeah, I am not super happy to see them on the list.
You can vote for somebody else then.
Oh, I'm voting them below no award. I would say right now, like Alex Brown is probably my top choice, again, just because I really like the work that they do.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Let's discuss semi-prosing and fanzine next. So nominees in semi-prosing. Wow, scroll. Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Escape Pod, Faya, Podcastle, Strange Horizons, and Uncanny Magazine. We have a lot of repeats in this category.
I think this is actually, let me double check what the semi-prosing. I think this is the same group of nominees as last time.
It is almost identical, if not identical, for sure. Yeah. I'm happy to see Faya again.
Yeah, same.
This is definitely a category where a couple of semi-prosines just show up every single time. It's sort of like, I just don't have much to say about it anymore. They're always there. Beneath Ceaseless Skies, Strange Horizons, Uncanny Magazine. They all do great things, and I have nothing really to say about it. There's so many things that could be in this category, and I think it's kind of hard to get variety.
Yeah,
it's because the short fiction market is incredibly fragmented, and that's been going on for probably decades now.
Yeah, looking at the list, it's the same list of nominees as last year.
Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping, like, my only hope for this category, I don't really have a horse in the race at this point. I haven't read short fiction from last year. I did not nominate, but just give me a new winner. That's what I want.
Yeah, I agree.
Somebody else, please recognize somebody new.
Yeah,
I guess.
Although I will say, like, I will be disappointed if Uncanny wins again, and that's mostly because I feel like they just have so much momentum. Like, even with Faya winning last year, like, there's a lot of momentum behind them.
The thing about Uncanny is they have a lot of fiction nominees this year, which could bump them up.
That.
But yeah. I think with Faya winning last year, I'm hoping, my feeling kind of is that voters are kind of feeling the same way that we are, perhaps, that they're looking for something new to recognize, and that's good. So, yeah. All right. Fanzine. The Full Lid, Galactic Journey, Journey Planet, Quick Sip Reviews, Small Gods, and Unofficial Hugo Book Club blog.
I don't think Small Gods should be on this.
What is Small Gods? I've never heard.
It's an ongoing project that between Sean Mcguire and Lee Moyer, where Lee Moyer will do art and Sean Mcguire will write like short pieces about the art. It's like Small Gods, so like the small god of procrastination or something. And like, it's interesting, but it feels very odd for me that it's on the ballot, because it doesn't feel like a fanzine. It's very much I don't know.
That's interesting, because it's just the same. It's
the same too. It's just Lee Moyer.
Okay. It's not a collection of pieces by different creators.
No.
That's interesting. That would be that's like something falls into a fiction category.
Yeah.
Related work.
Yeah, I actually do feel
or an art category, maybe.
I feel like this should actually be under related work and not fanzine, because I feel like something like the Rec List is a better thing for a fanzine. It's like a collection. It's like collecting things. It's, you know, sometimes commissioning people to talk, like give specific recs about things. So they'll do like, here's someone who to talk about, you know, this fandom. So like the Untamed and how they came to the Untamed and give their fic recs, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just, it feels very, it feels out of place to me.
I don't know. There is this like Hugo almost like tradition thing, which is basically if enough Hugo voters think that it fits into a category, they let it slide basically. And I kind of feel like that might be the case here. If enough people thought it belonged here, then the administrators do let it through. Yeah. And to be honest, I don't really want to go back to the huge discussion about the Lodestar and Naomi. No, I feel like that may also be tied in with what Kelsey was saying about like the nominators and voters might be confused. Then yeah, they keep nominating the thing and so it gets through because administrators are not going to argue with the way that a majority of people categorize it, I guess. So, but yeah. Anything else on fanzine?
That was really the only thing I had other than that.
Okay. Fan cast. The nominees are Be the Serpent, the Coode Straight podcast, which won last year, Hugo Girl, Octothorpe, Our Opinions Are Correct, and World Building for Masochists. A lot of repeats again in this category.
It's a lot of repeats on a lot. It's very interesting that a lot of the so Be the Serpent, Code Street, Our Opinions Are Correct, and World Building for Masochists, all of those are hosted by writers.
This is my issue with this category since its inception, is that almost every single nominated cast is actually created and hosted and sometimes produced by actual professionals in the SFF industry. The originator of this category was the Squeakcast, hosted by professional writers. Loved Squeakcast. I've loved a lot of things in this category, but over time I've become increasingly uncomfortable with these things being designated as fan casts, because as you can see in the last couple of years with actual fan created things making it to the shortlist, there is a huge difference between those.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I feel this way. However, I'm also like genuinely a little confused about why it happens and like how, because like so obviously if a bunch of well-regarded industry professionals do a podcast that they're not getting professionally paid for, it is a fan work, and there's like no reason that fan work should be inherently better or worse. But I also see what you're getting about you listen, you pay attention to the substance of the things, and there's a difference.
Yeah, I mean, we'll compare this with fanzine, which is different from semi-prozine or other publishing categories. Most of the nominees in fanzine, the people creating those are not like editors like Jonathan Strawn or writers like Seanan Mcguire or whatever.
Why do we think this is happening in Fancast? Like, why are all of the professionals doing podcasts and
because
not
people are nominating their friends? Like, that's
nominating their friends.
But
and
like, are the professionals not doing fanzines instead, or like, is there a reason they're all doing podcasts?
Because they're writing and publishing things and things that pay them, and that are like the professional publishing outlets that pay by the word or have contracts and stuff. I mean,
yeah, and I think the other thing that's really frustrating for me is I think that there's so many great SFF related podcasts that might be popular outside of the particular sphere that Hugo occupies. But I think that people, again, are going to be nominating their friends, nominating people they know. Like I have nominated Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men for years. And it is an incredibly popular podcast. Like they have been producing that podcast for a very long time. It has never gotten on the ballot. And it's something I actually think would fit very well, where they read and talk about the X-Men, and they do like some Hawk Talk, which is their non-X-Men related, like off-week episodes. And they have a lot of really great discussions about like intersectionality. Like Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men is great. Even if you've never read the X-Men. I have never read the X-Men. My entire knowledge comes from the movies, and it's great. But then you also have YouTubers like, Rachel. You have a nominated Bookish Realm, Ashley Bookish Realm, because she does really good videos, not just talking about like SFF, but also talking about comics and kids' books. And I think the focus on podcasts that people's friends or colleagues are writing is really, it reflects how limited their exposure is. And I think it also makes it.
I think it comes down to Worldcon culture and community. The things that get nominated are created by people who are heavily involved in Worldcon, therefore more likely to be professionals, more likely to have like live shows at actual Worldcon. And they're also, to be fair to them, because I've certainly nominated a bunch of these that are nominated this year in the past, is they actually do have interesting things to say, and fans, non-professionals, enjoy listening to them and hearing perhaps some more of the behind the scenes or professional takes on these things. So
yeah, I will say none of my nominees got on. I nominated you, Rachel. I nominated Jay and Miles Explain the X-Men. I nominated Ashley, and I nominated Desi Geek Girls, which is another one where I would love to see them on the ballot. Like I think Swapna and Preeti have a lot of really great conversations about speculative fiction, and they have such a really great perspective on things. But because they're not in the Worldcon sphere, they don't get nominated, and it's really frustrating that. And that's the other thing. This category is incredibly white and is very.
Yes, it is. And I think we get a lot more diversity if people went beyond the professional host podcasts and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the idea, Rachel, of just having a separate category, like have a semi-pro cast and a fan cast, because I enjoy like Coode Street podcast. I enjoy a lot of these done by professionals, but I'd love to see booktubers and stuff recognized too, because it's kind of a separate thing.
Yeah, I think it was kind of a shock to Hugo nominators when they realized that YouTube channels were actually eligible in this category. I was actually present at a conversation at an actual Worldcon talking to somebody who didn't realize that their like proposed change to the criteria for fan cast would exclude anything that wasn't audio only. Like they just genuinely did not realize that the implications of that, Yeah. So I wish I had more to say about this category, but it's like the only one of these that I've listened to at all is the Coode Straight podcast, and they're all repeat nominations. So
I don't listen to any, I will say my podcast listening has been cut back dramatically during the pandemic, but none of these are ones that, sometimes Be the Serpent, but other than that, these are not ones that I go to for commentary about speculative fiction.
I listened to a few episodes of a couple of these in the past, but not anything in the past year, so I haven't listened to any of the actual eligible episodes.
Yeah, I do wish that Coode Street had taken a page out of Our Opinions Are Correct and bowed out and recused themselves this year after winning last year.
This is 100% one of those categories where a tradition of recusing yourself would be extremely beneficial to the category as a whole, to let new voices in and get a chance and just expose the nominators to more things.
Yeah, I agree. I think for stuff like fanzine and fan cast and fan writer, it's having that tradition just, I think, helps helps the health of the category, because it doesn't just stagnate the way that
and you know, like in any category where somebody has recused themselves, you know, temporarily or permanently after winning, I don't think anybody has ever come out and said that it's not a classy thing to do. It is. It is always classy.
If you ask Adam Christopher, he doesn't understand why you wouldn't recuse yourself permanently, but that's a different take.
Yeah. So I think the last thing to discuss in this category probably is, I think some people are asking, like, why no booktubers this year? And Thomas makes one of the big points that we've been saying for years, is there is not actually much of an overlap between people who know about BookTube, who make the content, who watch it, and the Worldcon Hugo voters. There's just not that much of an overlap. And I think over the past year, like everything from last year, I think a lot of us were just not very involved in Worldcon. I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. What some people may not know is that kind of in the lead up to Claire making it onto the ballot and then me making it onto the ballot, was that booktubers actually were had a presence at Worldcon. And, you know, we're talking ourselves up and handing out badge ribbons and stuff. And we haven't been able to do that for the last 2-3 years now. God, it's been 3 years since Dublin. And then that makes an impact, definitely, especially in a category where people, like the average voter, does not know that this thing is eligible, much less knowing that it exists. So.
But we're all voters, right? So there's a little overlap.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe we're all going to Chicago and we could all meet up.
There is definitely growing plans for a BookTube presence at ChiCon. Yes.
I'm really looking forward to it, and just being able to see everyone, and maybe doing a pilgrimage to see your favorite dead murder bird, Sue.
Yes.
Wait, what is this reference? I'm not in on the joke.
Sue, the T-Rex.
So the Field Museum in Chicago, it's the Natural History Museum, has this incredible, I think it's either fully intact or mostly intact T-Rex skeleton, and it goes by Sue. And,
I've been there. I think I've seen it.
Yeah, and Sue has a presence on Twitter.
Okay.
It's fantastic. They're non-binary. And yeah, it's just, I highly recommend following them. Just
I need to find this Twitter account, obviously.
Wow. Okay, so unless I'm miscounting, I think we only have one category left. Astounding Award.
Oh yeah.
All right. Get our second wind going. The Astounding Award for Best New Writer, presented by Dell Magazines, not actually a Hugo Award. The nominees here are Tracy Dion, Micaiah Johnson, A.K. Larkwood, Everina Maxwell, Shelley Parker Chan, and Shiran J. Zhao.
I want Micaiah Johnson to win.
I think she is the only one I've actually read anything by.
I was so close to winning last year. I think this year is her year.
I think, yeah, because I feel like a lot of times when there's someone who, people tend to prefer people in their second year of eligibility.
Gives you extra time to read the book. Like me, I did not get around to the book last year, so I have a second chance this year.
Yeah, same. I will say I did really enjoy The Unspoken Name by A.K. Larkwood, and I have the sequel which I've been meaning to read. It hit like a lot of tropes that I really love.
It was a season for me. So.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see her back on the ballot. I'm also excited for the people who are in their first year. So Jiran J. Zhao and Shelley Parker Chan and Everina Maxwell.
Yeah.
The only author on here that I've read is Everina Maxwell. I did read Winter's Orbit. I thought it was, I found it to be the sort of like page-turning escapist type of book that I wanted to read when I picked it up. So it's a solid debut, I think.
We need more of that.
Yeah, I think the one person who I nominated who didn't get on the ballot, I had nominated Aiden Thomas.
Aiden Thomas was eligible?
Yeah, it was his second year because Cemetery Boys came out in 2020, and then last year was Lost in the Neverwoods.
I nominated Jennifer Saint. I can't remember who else I nominated.
Yeah, I had nominated A.K. Larkwood. Yeah, I think the only one who I nominated who didn't get on the ballot was Aiden Thomas.
I need to read some of these books. I think I'm really going to prioritize She Who Became the Sun because it's also on the best novel list. I'm going to prioritize Space Between Worlds. So those are the two I'm prioritizing in my reading. The Unspoken Name is one of the ones where I just don't know if it's going to be for me. So I'll have to like suss out my mood to see if I'm in the right mood for that sort of fantasy.
Yeah, I feel like that one is kind of, you either like it or you don't. And it was one of those that, like I said, worked very well for me. But I could see how it wouldn't work for other people.
See, the thing is, I've discovered that I've become the type of reader where like the same book will either wildly work for me or like wildly not, depending on my mood when I pick it up. And so I'm just being very, very careful about when I pick things up so that I don't accidentally force myself to read something in a mood where I'll like hate it and end up bashing it all over the internet when it's not like bad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've had a string of those recently where like I've been in a funk for like a month, and like I feel like everything I'm reading right now, I'm just not giving it a good chance because it's like my mood is going to override anything that I might have enjoyed.
I find
so bad about that.
That's when I tend to reread things. Like in summer of 2020, when I was like in a really bad mental space, I reread Tamara Pierce because I'm like, I can't deal with anything new. I know I will love these. I know they will make me feel happier.
Mm-hmm.
And that was probably the best choice I could have made at the time.
Penrick has been my go-to for that sort of thing.
Yes, Tamara Pierce is mine, and also Megan Whalen Turner's The Thief series.
Oh, yeah.
Though, to be honest, I keep putting off my reread of it because I know what happens in book 2, and it's still every time.
Penrick or The Thief series? Oh, Queen of Atolia?
Yeah.
That's book 2, right? Yeah.
Book 2, yeah. Yep.
I still have a few more of those books to read, and I'm like, I'm dragging the series out.
Yeah, I will say I had nominated it for best series last year, and this is so bad. I was so happy that it got more nominations than the Dresden Files.
I was like, after seeing how close it got close to the shortlist, after seeing how close it was, I was like kicking myself for not starting the series soon enough to nominate it.
Yeah, that was one where I caught, because I had started it and then I hadn't finished it, and then I caught up in time for the last book, and it was one of those where like I could see like for me the last book worked very well in the same way that the last Vorkosigan book worked, where it was like the end of something, but you could also see how there could be a spin-off series.
If that ever happens. All right. Anything else to say on this last category?
No. Overall.
Just overall, I am happy that there are 2 YA authors on the list along with the adult authors. I think it's a good mix of types of books. So it's, I mean, half first year, half second year. It looks nice to me. I haven't read most of them, but it looks nice.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. All right, we've made it to the end.
Whew.
3 hours.
3 hours.
And now I need to go eat lunch because
I'm gonna say, my blood sugar has gotten very low over like the last 15 minutes, so I need to go eat something. So let's wrap up. Thank you, everybody who joined us in chat. You were all very lively and very talkative, and we appreciate that. And if you stuck with us for the entire 3 hours,
wow.
So yeah, this was really fun. Thank you to Kristen and Kelsey for joining us. I'm really glad you guys could come.
Thank you for having us.
And,
Thank you so much.
Alrighty, so yes, promise. We would prefer Kelsey's hat changes.
I could have done hat changes. I had a whole. I asked before the live show started which hat I should wear because I should have done hat changes.
Keep that in mind for next year.
Yeah.
All right. That is it. That is all of our opinions. Thank you guys. One note, the regular Stitch and Bitch monthly live show will be on the 24th. It will be over on Rhea's channel, the Bookfinch. It is already scheduled. I'll try to remember to put a link in the description. But if you want more of us in the future, just wait 2 weeks or so. And that is it for my housekeeping. So, all right, time to say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
All right, we're going away now.